pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a short hearing we have to go through first. Normally, at the beginning of the meeting, I've got an opening statement to read, but I'll wait until after the hearing to do that. But we are have a hearing tonight to consider adoption of the General Assistance Ordinance for 2019-20. Town Manager, you want to speak to this?
Sure. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we have not updated our GA ordinance since 1997. And it's something that the state updates every few years, and they recently updated it effective October the 1 of this year. And so it is before you. The major changes from the previous iteration of this was that it includes potable water as a benefit or as a basic life necessity. It has a definition for homelessness, so they define, who is homeless and who is not. And then it also allows, in keeping with Department of Health and Human Services standards, allowance for a cell phone if it is required for work purposes. And so those are the three main changes from the prior iteration of the ordinance.
The definition of homelessness, anything unusual, or is it just?
No, it just outlines the number of days that someone is without shelter or in a homeless shelter.
Any comments from the board?
No.
Hearing none. Declare the hearing closed. That was easy. Good. Now we'll move on to the meetings. Okay, we're all set?
Oh, we need to.
We need to vote.
You need to
I
vote,
think we
I'm
probably
sorry.
need to vote on it.
Well, the hearing's closed, but we have to vote. All right, I'll move that we adopt the ordinance as prepared. The ordinance before us, as prepared by MMA. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And one other thing I should note is, obviously, most of our ordinances need to be approved by the voters at town meeting. Under state law, this one does not. This is one of the few exceptions where the select board itself can approve the ordinance.
Good.
I'll second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? Any other discussion?
Nope.
Okay, all in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. All right, now, we'll open the meeting. Somebody want to make a motion to open the meeting?
Make a motion, we, second.
Made and seconded. All in favor? 4, 1 absent. Okay, good evening and welcome. We're happy to have you attend the Select Board meeting. The Select Board is a public meeting, not a public hearing. You do not have the right to speak at a public meeting as you would at a public hearing. However, it is the custom of the board to allow people to speak. We only ask that you wait to be recognized, be respectful to your neighbors who are speaking, and that you stay on track. We're recording the meeting minutes, so please state your name for the record. Finally, if you've not signed the register, please do so before you leave. It's over there. And that's it. And as far as identifying yourself, that's really important because otherwise it's an unattached voice on the record. Okay, now, item 1 on the agenda. We have a public comment section. This is something new we're trying out. Citizens may raise issues not on the agenda at this time. Remarks are limited to less than 3 minutes or less. The Select Board will not engage in lengthy discussion or act on the matters raised. We will have them for consideration, depending on what you have to say. Does anybody want to raise any issues that are not on the agenda? Good. That worked well.
Moving right along.
All right, moving right along. Please stop. Okay, old business. Discussion and possible action on ordinance allowing cost recovery for fire department services. Town Manager?
Well, we have our fire chief here, and this has been before you before. We made the change that the board had previously requested, excluding the town's property taxpayers from being subject to the cost recovery as it relates to traffic accidents or fines. They would still be subject to cost recovery if they have an incident related to either illegal burning, which obviously is against the law, or too many false alarms. The ordinance that you have, the copy of the ordinance, that is noted in the first paragraph, second sentence. And our fire chief is here, and we're both available to answer any questions that you might have.
Anyone want to say anything?
I think Dan McKenzie does everybody, but no, I think we discussed both of the made those
Good.
that you asked for.
No, this is not one, this is one that has to go to the town, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Comments from the board?
No, I think it
Thank you.
was spot on.
Comments from the public? Okay. Somebody want to make a motion? I'll move that we adopt the ordinance.
Has to go to MMA for legal review first, correct?
Yes.
So we don't adopt it yet until it comes back, correct?
Okay.
I have submitted it. I have.
Move back over there, will you?
I have
I'm like,
already,
you're
I
just
have already
checking, but-
submitted it to MMA, but they have not responded back.
Okay.
All right, so I make a motion that we,
We do a pending there, approval.
We can do
Yeah.
it pending.
or can we just wait and adopt it at the next meeting when we have anything back from MMA?
Well, we can do it either way, whichever you prefer. I don't
What's
see
your
it.
preference?
I don't, my preference is to adopt it pending their approval. If they don't approve it, or they want to make modifications, we'll have to go back and go over it again.
So would it make sense for us to hold off, see if they make modifications and then approve it, you know, yea or nay?
No.
Yes.
Yes, it will. All right, let's do
So
that.
I make a motion that
Table
we
it.
table this to the next meeting pending MMA's review.
Sorry, Dan.
It doesn't mean you have to come back, Dan. We can totally sign it without you.
All right.
Did, was that seconded?
Second. Oh, second. All those in favor? Four. What I meant with it, I'm tired tonight. All those in favor? We got four in favor, one absent. Discussion and possible action on Great Pond Yacht Club proposal to purchase Dalton property.
Well, some folks from the yacht club approached me a couple of weeks ago and expressed a desire to come before you tonight and lay out a proposal for purchasing the Dalton properties and what their vision for that might be if they were allowed to purchase it. And you have that proposal, a written proposal, in your packets. And we've got several members of the yacht club here who I'm sure would be eager to talk about their proposal.
Who's the spokesperson?
Chris Bradley. You received a proposal, I don't want to go through it.
Sure.
In detail, because that wouldn't be efficient for time. On the final page, there's 6 points that outline the benefits to the town of Belgrade if you would, give us the go-ahead for this. And they really center around increasing the access for sailing for residents and youth, and also eliminating liability and cost for the town of that property, and returning the working capital represented in that property to the town. So that's the summary. I guess what I think would make most sense would be to respond to questions that you folks might have.
Question?
I do.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
do. When you came before us before, you had said that you wanted, that it was necessary to have 20 moorings in the water. And so my question to you is, do you still see it as 20 moorings? Even though you're talking about expansion and growing. The 20 moorings was based upon your, as I understood it from, these are my notes from last year. As I remember, the 20 moorings was based upon your membership at that time.
Yeah, I can address that. This is Ben Ford, my name is Ben Ford.
Hi, how are you?
So we probably don't need 20 moorings. The amount of moorings that we need is to offset the expenses related to maintaining the property. So the number of moorings that we would need goes up and down depending on the revenue or the expense of maintain the piece of property. So I think when the 20 moorings was discussed, it was, buying a piece of property for a significant amount of money and using that income from those moorings to offset or help pay the mortgage for that property.
So you're not seeing those moorings as for members
No,
necessarily?
no, the moorings would be for members, but we need the moorings in order to generate the income to offset the mortgage and for maintaining the property. What I'm telling you is that the number of moorings can be as low as 6, and it doesn't necessarily have to be 20. So it just depends on the price of the property that we end up purchasing. That will determine whether or not we can offset that with moorings. It could very well be that we find other sources of income to support the property financially. So 20 is not our ask at this point. We actually don't have a fixed number in, and what we would do is, once we got into discussions about how the property is to be used and what the property is to consist of in terms of boundaries and frontage and things like that, then we could come and say, this is the number of moorings that we would need in order to offset that. Our interest is keeping the number of moorings as small as possible just to cover our bills, not to create a big footprint on the lake. That was our, and so, and also, the other part of the income stream is to do onshore storage as well. So we're keeping boats, small sailboats onshore. And again, the purpose of this is really is for sailboats only. It's not to create a marina with more other types of boats. It's really limited to sailboats. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yep.
Ben, did I understand you plan to charge for the moorings?
Yes, we would charge our members for the moorings for using them. And we would use that income to offset and help pay for the yacht club bills.
Did you plan to apply for a marina permit?
I have not looked into all of the regulatory issues that we would need to handle. I think what we need to do is get an idea of the scope of what we're talking about, and then that will help narrow our inquiry into the regulatory issues that we need beyond permission from the town. So what we need from the state.
Thank you. Town manager, where are we on the mooring? Where's the mooring committee working on that ordinance?
The mooring committee will come before you at the next meeting, December 3rd, just to run by their proposals before we start crafting ordinance language. And one of their proposals is to limit the number of moorings to 1 for every 50 feet of shoreline.
How much shoreline are we talking about at the Dalton property?
I don't know.
They're very small. Just 50 feet.
The question?
Chris, Matt?
Chris Bradley, the Dalton property does not own any frontage on the lake.
Nobody owns frontage on the lake, actually.
Okay, the Dalton property doesn't have any, the footprint of the Dalton property is not contiguous to the lake, it's not abutting the lake. There's a right of way to the lake.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, why is that right away?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Who's the right-of-way granted to?
The right of,
Seems to me that's why we bought the Dalton property, to do away with right-of-ways, yes.
well, because the right of way belongs to the town of Belgrade, so it's
Yeah.
not granted to the Dalton properties, and that was why, because the Dalton properties right of way went directly through, well, it was owned by the town.
Yeah. So it's actually town right-of-way, it's not public right-of-way
Right.
necessarily in the same sense.
Once again, Chris Bradley, the current residents of the two units in the Dalton property are accessing the lake through the right of way at the dock there.
Yeah, they may be using it, but they don't necessarily have a right to use it. We're just not
I
prohibiting
haven't
it.
seen the details, I
Yeah.
don't know that, we're just trying to explore this concept.
In any event, that's the route that you propose to go between the garage, the Dalton house, the garage, and the lake?
Yes.
Somebody has something in there.
Yes, go ahead.
Report, I believe that Betty Petchel pulled the deed, and there was no right-of-way mentioned in the deed, so it must be the town's right-of-way.
Yeah.
So in order to do this, we would need some
That's my recollection, that's one of the reasons we bought the Dalton property, to do away with the right-of-way. There was a big one, and there was another one, and the town owns it all now, so. Well,
I have another question.
go ahead.
too.
Get you next day.
Sorry, Joe. You can-
Go ahead.
I speak from the standpoint of having worked 20 years with the Boys and Girls Clubs in the area. And if you were to have this property, you would be in proximity to the largest child-serving organization in town. That requires background checks on all people using the property. So something to think about.
Chris Bradley again. That's the current residents of the Dalton property are undergoing under the rules as well.
They were background checked when they were, if I remember correctly, we had this conversation before when we,
In the youth sailing program, are we complying with the?
I don't think we've ever done background checks of the sailing program. We just haven't asked for it, haven't pushed it.
because it's come through the rec department.
And it goes through the rec
It comes through
department.
the rec
Yeah.
department.
Is that right?
We have a run on,
Yeah.
I don't know if, family that in the Iowa Community because they're working with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Ben Ford. SailMe does do background checks on their instructors. And the instructors that are there are employees of SailMe, they're hired by SailMe, they're insured by SailMe, and they're certified by the governing body of all SailMe. So
It'd be-
they're-
yeah. It'd be easy enough to fix anyway, so.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. Anybody?
So,
Jeff?
just to further explore that, Chris Bradley again. Are you proposing that anybody that attended a gathering at the Dalton property would be subject to a background check?
I might think about that. What's required nationally for the Boys and Girls Clubs now, because of all of the controversy and revealing of sex abuse in Boy Scouts of America and in Boys and Girls Clubs and various child-serving organizations, they're now requiring that every board member have a background check and sign a code of conduct, and there's a lot of other paperwork that goes with it.
It's not necessarily something we have to decide tonight.
No, I'm just simply,
But it's a-
And that was a past board member of the Portland Boys and Girls Club. It's a great organization.
yes.
It's super. Yeah, I mean, that would be another item that we could more in the future.
Yeah, okay.
Happy, sorry.
Yeah. Jack,
Sir.
did you have a question?
Yeah, Jack Sutton, Budget Committee. Is the Yacht Club a nonprofit corporation, or is it not the same?
It is this gets this gets complicated, but it is a main nonprofit, that's the form of its corporate entity. We are a taxable entity, so we do not have a 501c3 status, so we pay taxes.
So we pay
You're not tax
we pay
exempt.
taxes to the town. So we do assessment.
Yes.
Taxes to the town. Okay. How about, change the subject, how about parking? What size groups would you anticipate? And is there parking adequate parking on the Dalton property, or would there be spillover to the parking lots to the south?
Chris Bradley, we typically have about 40 people at a gathering. Hopefully the club would throw in that might be larger than that. They often come by boat, or currently they almost all come by boat. And so it hasn't been a big parking issue. We have 7 races a year. They're held at various people's property on the lake. The gathering after the event might be on. I can think of a couple of them that are on White's Island, so there's no parking at all there. So it varies. So there seems to be fairly good parking at Dalton property, and and we don't anticipate, there's also, I believe, some land that's part of the property footprint that's kind of behind the Brown House, a little bit northwest on 227. So there's a little bit more space right there. I think it's over an acre. Do you remember?
I thought it was larger than that, but the parking is no problem.
We don't think that there would be a problem.
That land in the back, if it's what I'm thinking, is land that we had earmarked to put in some trails and things to be part of the recreation program. So I don't think that would be available anyway, unless those plans change. But I don't know that parking's, from what I've seen, parking's generally not a problem. You don't get as you say, most people come in boats. Now, if your gathering place is accessible by a road, you may get more, but still, you're gonna have most of the people, I think, come in boats.
A couple comments.
Ed?
Number one, I'm sensitive to the background check thing, but I know, there's another people that come and visit the Center for All Seasons and they don't have a background check, so, let's, not split hairs on that right now, but, I don't know what the next step in this is, but I'm guessing that the town would have to have a say in it, and, I'm guessing if this came before the town and it, increased the tax rolls and returned the capital invested in the Dalton property to the town, it certainly could be approved of by the town. I don't necessarily have a big concern about it. I mean, it would improve, you folks probably do some improvements to the property that are needed. As you state, I'm aware that there are some improvements that are gonna need to be done to the property at some point, which the town would have to do if we retain it. So, I guess in general, I'd be in favor of it to some degree. I guess I have a question to ask of maybe Lily and Linda, where they have a fair amount to do with the operation of the Center for All Seasons. What is their take on it? If you ladies wouldn't mind giving me your opinion, or giving us your opinion on it, if you have one, if you wish to have one.
Hi, this is Linda Bacon. I've been on the rec board since 2005. Actually, the former owner of that property was on the rec board at that time. Which is one of the reasons why the family wanted to see the town buy the property so that it would become part of the recreation property of the town. My recollection about from discussions that were had when we were deciding whether or not to buy the property include the desire on the part of some of the select board members that the town be paid back for the property before the rec board could use it for rec programs. That's why it's being rented. I know there are a number of people that don't think that the town should be in the rental business, but we rent out space at the Center for All Seasons, we rent out space at the North Belgrade Community Center now, and that could end up eventually becoming another property or another space that could be rented out and be used for the summer camp. Right now, you can't really leave things set up in the Center for All Seasons because it's rented out at night. There are different functions going on, but it would be, we talked about it being an area for crafts and board games to be set up, and a garage be used for storage. We have an incredible shortage of storage space on that property. And last year, I guess I didn't realize that this was gonna come up again, because I thought we had discussions not just about Camp Green, but about the Dalton property, and some of the concerns about the Dalton property then that haven't changed was the access to the shore during the summer when the summer camp is running, Monday through Friday. Right now, yes, the public has the right to go use the beach and whatnot, but there's not a lot of people that come through that. It will just be opening it up and inviting more foot traffic across. There were also some concerns about alcohol use.
About what?
Alcohol use.
The discussion last year was more about renting the property, with maybe some possibly buying it, but, these are concerns that the board continues to have. Can you add anything to that?
Do you have,
Thank you.
does the rec committee have, I want to make sure I understand this, do they have any plans at this time to utilize that property when it becomes available for the rec program?
Not at the moment. Well, we're a number of years away from the property being paid for, such that it would become available for 7 or 8 years. That's my understanding.
Well, when that happens, if that happened tomorrow, would you be using the property?
Well, I listed a few things that it would be used for.
Okay. Anybody else?
Good information, thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I was
Oh,
gonna say.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
So I just wanted to mention, that in perusing the proposal, I think there's a misconception that the land was donated, and the Dalton property was donated, and it wasn't. There's a mortgage on it, so we do pay that, but the reason for the renting of the property was to generate income and not leave the building sitting there empty to potentially go into disrepair. So the townspeople wanted them rented with the money to offset the mortgage.
Right, I did have a misconception, Chris Bradley again, about whether it was purchased or donated, I thought it was donated. So there's a mortgage on the property?
Yes.
And so what was spoken about paying it off, that's to pay it off the mortgage, is that the
Yes.
concept? So it's generating enough free cash after its expenses and maybe capital reserve or something like that to pay it off?
It actually generates a pretty good amount of money every year, so.
So, and that was the other thing, was anything over and above, that this is part of the rec programs, this is it was intended to be part of their budget. I fear that if we are entertaining the idea of selling the property that brackets the town property, it sets us back to where we were before, which was the intention was to purchase the property to secure that section for future use for the town of Belgrade. So while while I'm sympathetic to the plight and wanting to find a piece of property that would be inexpensive, I mean, if you're saying $185,000, it would be a screaming deal on the lake. I feel like it would set us back to where we did what we did because we wanted to secure that area for the town and for the growth of the rec program and to utilize that for the taxpayers.
I think our concept was that the fit of the Great Pine Yacht Club works so well there. I mean, it's not that we're looking for cheap property, because we haven't honestly looked for inexpensive property on the lake. We're looking for suitable property that would have, would work for us from the standpoint of having a structure that we could utilize, having an accessible waterfront. So that really wasn't it so much. The being on Route 27, having accessibility to, especially we have a few members that don't have camps on Great Pond, and some that live as far away as Oakland, Waterville, and so that the idea of having them, giving them the ability to moor a boat, have access to that boat, participate in sailing on Great Pond, rather than, they can certainly put in a motorboat and a non-keel boat pretty easily, like a dinghy type boat at the public launch, which is right across. But so this would give them the access to have a boat like Mr. Green has a keel boat that he's over at Mr. McManus's house, because he doesn't have a place to moor it on Great Pond. And this would increase accessibility for Belgrade residents and non-residents and people to really participate in sailing on Great Pond.
Thank you, Melanie. I didn't know that background. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk too about doing away with an in-holding in the middle of that property, so, and this is what we're talking about, is creating it all over again. So,
Right.
But anyway, yes, Ben?
Just really quick, Ben Ford. I just want to address the background check issue. We don't do background checks on our members. However, we do, as an organization that organizes in partnership with the town youth programming and with Salem Maine, we actually have very strict policies about adult and youth interaction. I actually helped write those policies for Salem Maine, and we adopted those policies as part of our bylaws in the club. So we take that very seriously. We take child safety very seriously. The other thing that's really important is that we view the town and specifically the rec department as partners in the youth programming part of this. And so we don't want to. This isn't a situation where everything has to be mutually exclusive. This is a situation where I think what we want to do is engage in a dialogue to see if this is possible. And if it's not possible, if it doesn't work for both parties, including the rec department, then it's probably not something that we will continue with.
Tennessee.
And so those are the only two comments that I want to make.
No, if it wouldn't work out to purchase the property, and if in a handful of years, well, the current lease, longest lease is what, up in September of next year, although I think one of them had requested 5 years.
Yeah, on the house itself, I think.
Yeah.
Wherever they did the new floor.
Where they did the
Garage.
floor
So they
and they did
requested
something
it.
else in there too.
So there's one there anyhow that's a little bit in limbo, but I don't know that I would be, that I would disregard the idea of potentially like a long-term leasing of the property. And are you looking specifically to purchase, or would it be, would a long-term lease be acceptable? And maybe not the whole property, because I wouldn't want to take away from what the rec center would want to use it for, but also would be utilized probably more in the summertime as part of the summer rec program and the teen program there. So just throwing another idea kind of into the mix, that if purchasing it wasn't an option, potentially leasing.
All right, Chris Bradley, we would consider a long-term lease. It's a little bit more complex, because we would need to structure that so we could make improvements and to have the cost of those improvements make sense to us as well as the town. But that's something that we would certainly consider.
We already have that type of lease with the old town building. In fact, the Historical Society is here tonight to get approval on some changes they want to make. So, we're used to doing that, that's possible. And as far as this thing, as far as I'm concerned, I'm only one board member, but as far as I'm concerned, the question of background checks can be handled easily. It's not like it's insurmountable.
Well, organizations
So what's
do it all
the
time.
next step with this? I mean, we've gotten a lot of viewpoints on the pros and cons of this whole thing. There's there's people on both sides of the issue. Where do we go from here?
Well, one of the things I wanted to say, we have a request from our board member who's not here. Shut up.
That's part of the recording. That's great.
Not to take action on it tonight, and I'd like to honor that Ricky has got health problems and he's not here because of that. So I was going to suggest that we table this anyway, at least till the next meeting. And we need some time to think about it, if it's not something that we can act on right now.
I'd also like to read into the record something that came by Facebook
Go ahead.
on this issue. I do not know the writer of this. It's from Todd Yolish. Do not know who he is. But it said, why would the town ever sell waterfront property that could be used for the citizens to a private organization that would limit its citizens to using that land now or in the future? Sounds like the town wouldn't be doing its taxpayers justice. And the reason why I put that there is because of your remark about the fact that we will probably, before we take any action on this, would take it to the town.
Mhm.
So, just so you folks know, that there may be an attitude out there that, that's something you've got to deal with,
Mhm.
okay?
Well, it's not something, I don't think that the select board would just make a blanket, you know,
Well, the select board at some point will either come and make a recommendation, it has to go to
would
the
make a
town.
recommendation.
Make a recommendation, yea or nay, to the town.
Yeah.
And it'll go to before the town meeting, and they'll make the decision.
Mhm.
We had to get their permission to buy the property, so
Mhm.
logical, we have to get their permission to sell the property.
Absolutely.
So, we can't really make a decision tonight within
Mhm.
minute. I would like to wait, I would request, I'm gonna ask you all, we'll vote on whether to table it,
Mhm.
just to give Ricky a chance to have some input. Anyway, Bob, what's in your mind?
There is one other issue, and I'm not sure how it plays into that.
Barbara Ford.
According to the state, commercial entity has to have 300 feet of shore frontage. And, Elaine, you know anything more about that? So that's something that has to be explored too.
Say that again, please.
You have to,
Apparently, according to one of our members, the state laws require that a commercial entity have 300 feet of frontage.
Thank you. Thank you for repeating that.
So I don't know how that plays into regulations.
well, you're gonna have to have, it seems to me, you're gonna have to have a town permit too, or a lake, shoreline zoning permit. And I think that requires that 300 feet also.
Mhm.
But you're gonna, whatever is in there is gonna have to comply with all the rules. So, and I don't know, I'm not sitting here at this point saying you can or you can't comply. But that's up to,
No, I'm just saying it's one more thing.
yeah, yeah.
We
yeah.
all-
It's all, I mean, you're not ready to make a move here anyway, but, that's up to the planning board, it's gonna have to be involved. Anything else from anybody? Okay, I would make a motion that we table this until the next meeting.
I'll second it.
Second?
Made and seconded, any other discussion, board? Yeah, all in favor? 4 in favor and 1 absent. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Don't take any of this as any kind of criticism. I think the sailing program for the kids is a great program. I don't wanna,
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't wanna see that hurt in
No,
any
we
way.
really appreciate everyone's time here.
Sure.
So, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome to come again next time. But stick around for the rest of the meeting. Take my place.
They only, they're one issue.
All right. Discussion, possible action on Old Townhouse restoration by Belgrade Historical Society. Ernie, would you cover this for me?
Sure.
I'll be back in a second.
What,
2 seconds.
is there anybody here to speak to that, or, well, certainly.
Yes. I can
Step
see
right up, Diane.
Diane Dow from the Historical Society.
Yes.
As you know, we had a referendum vote in 2017 that gave, the town voted on allowing the Belgrade Historical Society to raise money to restore or renovate the old town meeting house with the approval of the select board. And we're here tonight to tell you that we are ready to do some work on the old town meeting house. We've raised $88,000, and we figure that is a good way to start. All of that money has come from people associated with the Belgrade and Belgrade Lakes and organizations here in town. We have not received any from anybody else at this point. We anticipate having Dan Mitchell of River Homes Restoration and Sydney do the work. He did a up-to-date assessment of the old townhouse in 2013, and we want to start by having him do another assessment. 2013 is now 2019. Not anything was done in the intervening 6 years, so we want to see where the old town meeting house stands at this point. We met with people from the cemetery committee and from town building people to clean out the old building. So right now, the building is completely cleaned out, and this will allow the restoration people to get a really good look at what is going on with the building. We have a contract with them to begin the end of November, and we'll have to get a dumpster for some of the things that they'll be taking down. We want to remove some particle boards, some man-made seedings, any rotten or decaying wood. We've gotten our building permit done. That's kind of where we stand, but I wanted to make sure that the board knew what was going on, since our referendum said with approval of the zoning board.
Great. Does anybody have any other questions?
I do.
Okay.
Do we know if there's any asbestos in that building?
I don't know of any yet. Most of that work that was done on that building was done very early in 1900, when they separated off to make the sexton's office. Nothing else was done after that. I know they did a roof. I know they put on shingle, they put a shingle roof on in 1951, and then sometime in the 70s, they put the metal roof on. But nothing else has been done to that.
Just, I think this is fantastic. Like, I'm super psyched to see this get moving. I just want to make sure that we're cautious, because if there is any asbestos, it's a whole different permitting process and removal.
That's a very good point.
You know, so hang tight to the purse strings.
Yeah, we're planning to. It's an exciting time to be doing something. What we're leaving the bicentennial coming in 2020. That's where Belgrade people would have voted, and they did vote in that building. We actually have written how many votes. The vote to separate from Massachusetts would be 28 to no, 2 noes.
28 to 2.
There were probably summer people from Massachusetts.
Any other comments?
I guess I'd make a motion that we recommend barring, you know, the finding of any asbestos in the building, that the permit be recommended for approval for the construction.
I asked for comments, not to steal my thunder.
Okay, well,
I'll second it.
okay.
Any other discussion? Made and seconded to approve the request. Any
And the request is to move forward, right?
questions? Move forward. Yeah. All right, all in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Good. Go do it.
Okay, thank
Go
you.
with that.
Number, letter C is tabled. Carl is not available, so he'll come up sometime in the future. Okay, discussion and possible action on the following warrant article request. Senior Resource Committee. Now that one is also to be tabled. Gary asked me, he can't be here, so he asked me to have it tabled, and I would like to honor that.
Yes,
And on that one, I'll move that we table that
Okay.
till at least the next meeting.
I seconded it.
Made and seconded, all in favor? Okay, 4 in favor, 1 absent. The second one is Belgrade, Belgrade Lakes Resource Group, 4th of July fireworks. Who's gonna speak to that?
Well, we have a representative here from the Business Resource Group, and essentially, they and the Senior Resource Committee were asking for the same thing, and that is to be excluded from having to collect the signatures in order to be put before the voters as a warrant article at the town meeting this year. But Chris can better address that.
Except that, that's right, we tabled the Senior Resource.
Correct.
At his request.
Correct, but they had the same
Similar
request.
thing. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Trish Cheney. I'm the office manager at Lakefront Real Estate and a realtor as well, but I've been appointed to the secretary position this year of the Belgrade Lakes Regional Business Group. One of the major things that we do to bring people to the town is the 4th of July annual fireworks show, as well as the parade, the boat parade, the car parade. This is an event that we go out to public to collect signatures for every year. We did it this year, again, collecting signatures on voting day as well as at the dump. And
We don't have it down.
I'm so sorry. Sorry, the transfer station.
I told you once already, didn't I?
Overwhelmingly, the majority of people do support
these signatures. And so what we're requesting is just the ability to take and make this a forever warrant or petition that we are able to take and pass that along to the knowledgeable select people to take and make that decision in the budget annually. I can say personally, I collected over 100 signatures this year, and I did have a few people that didn't want to sign. Mostly that's because of overwhelmingly just having fireworks at any time of the year or any time of the summer. And when you have a discussion with people and just say, hey, it's going to be July 4th at this time of night, take your dogs, settle them down. People overwhelmingly support having people be able to enjoy the fireworks show, get on the water, and be able to view them either from a place on shore or on water. Myself last year, I was able to get on the water in 183 vessels or boats with lights. I was in a canoe, so I know there's more than that. So I mean, it's enjoyed by a lot of people and brings a lot of people to this area, not only for the day, but especially the evening show. It brings people here for usually a week to rent or to spend a longer time period than just a day in town.
Well, like I say, I hate fireworks, absolutely hate them. But I always vote for it because I know it's good for the town, the townspeople want it, the merchants want it. So I always vote for it, despite that. Which is the way I think we should do. We should look for what's good for the town, not our own personal views. But I do have a problem with releasing the requirement to get the petitions. You ask for a relatively good chunk of money every year. $4,500 to town of Belgrade is a lot of money.
I think it's going up this year.
So I will point that out. It went up, we're requesting $5,000. Overall cost to run that show is about $13,000. We're asking for less than half, or half of the pyrotechnics contract. That contract did go up this year with the tariffs on fireworks. The second half, the majority of that money is raised through the community through donations. And then we also have the Belgrade Boat Shop, William or Bill Radleski. He donates over $3,000 in labor and equipment, moorings, everything to take and pull that show off. So it is a large chunk of change. And on voting day, I did hear from a lot of people that are concerned about budgets and costs. But it is an event that all ages, all members of the public, members of the community can enjoy. And it brings this area, especially people that want to come for the day or stay for the week, it kind of is a draw for people to come to this area.
Good.
So I have to say, I mean, I go to the fireworks every year, so, it isn't that we don't think that it's a draw, but the policy in the town has been that in order for external organizations to be allowed to put an item on the town of Belgrade's warrant for the taxpayers to vote on, that they have to collect the necessary number of signatures, because you're not a town entity, it is technically a private organization that's putting it on. And that's why that policy is there. In years past, I dare say somewhere around 2005, we didn't have the policy, and the policy was put in place because we were inundated with what was considered social service requests or outside organizations, and we needed to make sure that we were able to put some parameters around it. And essentially, if you want extra money out of the taxpayers, then you gotta ask them in a way that lets them know that there was some legwork done for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we can bypass that policy and have a forever article created for something that, yes, does benefit the town. I don't know if perhaps what we need to look at is more of like what we do with the food pantry, that it's actually a coalition between the town and the food pantry, and that this is considered a donation towards the food pantry on behalf of the town. So there may be a way to approach it that the taxpayers may find slightly palatable, but not bypass the process that was put in place for a reason. Does that make sense?
No, I think that's a valid point. The group that, the regional business group, we are a group of volunteers. We do this kind of, collecting the signatures is a large chunk of our time. We're happy to do that if that's the direction that you want to keep going. I think what would be great is if we could achieve that efficiency and not have to spend that time collecting those signatures, we would then be able to take that time and put it towards other efforts that we're trying to do for bringing, people to this area and being able to kind of broadcast that this is a great place to not only spend a day, but maybe more than that, maybe a week, maybe more. If there is a way that we could maybe look at it as being a donation, I don't believe that the business group is a for-profit organization. We're just basically, the money that we raise pretty much goes back into the fireworks, as well as obviously the holiday stroll is coming up on the 7th. So I do take your point. I think that my counterpoint would just be that we're volunteers and it's a lot of time taking and having to collect those signatures, but if that's the democratic way of taking and doing things and the policy that you want to explore, I can understand that. What we're trying to do is just see if there's a way to make this a little bit easier for people that are already pretty tapped out on time, but you guys are tapped out as well, being here, reviewing stuff every couple of weeks, so I understand that.
The other thing to consider is that the fireworks are not universally loved, as you found out yourself.
As I found out myself,
Yeah.
I would say, we collected 206 signatures, I'd say about a good healthy dozen did not respectfully want to sign, so it's about 5-6% of the folks out there. Some of the concerns are, pollution, noise, dogs, just not wanting that in the area, but overall, even after a little healthy debate, they've come to realize, it is good for the area. It's kind of that real, it's our signature event for the entire town. We have a whole day of events planned, and it's kind of capped off with that evening fireworks show.
As I say, that's why I personally always vote for it, but I do know that, and I get complaints, and I know there are other people, more than a dozen that you found. But, I don't know, if we waived it for you, then maybe we should waive it for United Way and for,
Senior spectrums and
yeah,
hospice.
all the other
All the
outlets,
other
you know.
Seniors
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Debbie's got something
I
back
see
there.
them.
How do you do a forever article on something that has a changing bottom line?
Well, one way,
It's just a technical
yeah,
question.
if you'll allow me, I think one way
Okay.
to do that potentially would be to set the town's contribution to the fireworks at a certain level, so that if there's an increase that happens, that it's absorbed by your group or just other people that you get involved to cover that. So that, and I think potentially it could be, if this is something that the vast majority of the town, and let's be honest here, if there's 5 or 6% of people that don't like the fireworks, including Michael Barrett, we would,
Michael Barrett's fair about it, though.
yes, and I think the other people that maybe don't like it agree with you, Michael, in that they support it because, if we're talking 85-90% of the people in town enjoy it and love to see it, and like in my case, I don't spend any money on fireworks elsewhere. I don't blow up my own fireworks. Many people do, and it's legal now, and they can. And I think that's what I heard from people.
Yeah.
That's the bugger, because there's people that set off fireworks not just on the 4th of July, but anytime they feel like it. And that bothers people's dogs and peace and quiet and all kinds of things like that. So, but I think, we could look at this potentially as, a set, $4,000, $4,500 amount, just in perpetuity, if we so choose. We could do that. But there again, I think that's something that would have to go to the town. I mean, the town would have to say, yeah, that's what we want to do, and we'll just stick with that going forward. And then, the balance, if it increases, is covered by, as I said, other folks. So that's an idea. And then, I suppose other groups, like Melanie said, United Way or what have you, Senior Spectrum, I suppose they could come before us too and say, we want to have the town give us $1,000 every year or $2,000 every year, and we'd like to see if the town could do that. And I suppose if the town voted to do that, that's the way it would be. So it could happen. There's a way to do it. And discussions such as like this are the impetus for that. So let's see where it goes from here, I guess. But
Andy, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to say, just to offer some background, this very discussion was held about 2 years ago.
yeah,
And these very issues were brought up to do this with the board at that time. Essentially said in the interest of fairness across the board, everyone should come to live with that, on the petition.
Mhm.
And the issue, I understood you to say that in the Senior Resources Committee, that was the same type of request.
Yeah, they went,
So,
yeah.
But the Senior Resources Committee, I don't think has to undergo that unless the board wants them to, because it is an ad hoc committee that the board
Town
decides.
committee.
But that's all I wanted to say. I'll probably be here and we discuss that.
Dennis, by the way, is one of the representatives that voted in favor of the god-awful law.
What?
Of the fireworks law.
I voted in favor of fireworks.
Yeah, right.
And then the bill that was put in this year to look at the issue of the pollution that fireworks cause.
Good.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for coming.
May I ask, Janie, again, may I just add one more point for you to consider? The contract that we signed with the pyrotechnics company is a 3-year contract. So that may be, I don't know if the board would like to consider the possibility of signing it for 3 years during this contract with a sunset at the end, but then it comes back up when we know what that new price might be. It might be something worth considering.
Sure.
How many members do you have
Our membership level
in Belgrade?
for the business group,
Yeah.
I believe it's around 96 different businesses, but I can get that number.
Is it really that difficult, in 96 members, get them all to pass and get a couple of signatures, put them together? You can put them on different forms and put them together.
So I did collect a ton of signatures, but some of those businesses are not necessarily residents of Belgrade.
I said businesses in Belgrade, that's right.
Yeah, it's a regional business group, so it's many businesses. I myself am a resident of Rome, so I wasn't able to sign that petition, but, we can collect the signatures. It's that extra added time, and effort when we could be focusing on other items, but I think it might.
So realistically, for this year's budget process, we can't reinvent the wheel.
No, and I have collected the signature system.
Yep, so this one would have to go to the signature collection, and then we can certainly, once we get through this budget season, have a conversation about, is there a way that we could do this? And honestly, the Belgrade Rome Food Pantry is the one that sticks in my head. But even that, we have to ask the taxpayers every year if they agree for us to accept that. I, for one, would not be in favor of that being made a perpetual article.
It was.
Or, no, I would with.
The food pantry?
The food pantry.
It is?
No, I mean
Oh,
fireworks.
fireworks.
Or all of the social service organizations being one, because people have different feelings about them, and that's the whole point of them coming forward every year as separate warrant articles, is that people may say yay to hospice and no to fireworks. But they have that right, it's their checkbooks. So, you're going forward this year.
Yep, got the signatures in, we got
But
transfer station.
Yes. Sorry, that's just sort of a running joke, that we really don't have one.
Are you suggesting we table this?
What's that?
Are you suggesting we table this?
Well, I would suggest perhaps a different proposal come forward.
So
So
look at
I would suggest like maybe not asking not to have to collect signatures at all, but perhaps setting up a warrant article that would, we'd see how we would word something that would be the same every year going before the taxpayers, but I do like the idea of a set amount. Like, the cost may go up, but everybody doesn't go, everybody doesn't enjoy it, so everybody, maybe it would just be a donation towards it that's set yearly.
All right, why don't we, I'll move we table this until and if the document you're looking for is submitted,
Any future time, could be March.
whenever.
So I just want to say, did you change the name of the organization? This says Belgrade Lakes Business Resource Group.
That's not the right name.
It's the Regional Business Group, is it not?
It's the Belgrade Lakes Regional
Belgrade Lakes
Business
Region
Business Group.
Not regional, region.
Region.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, this is all, we wasted all this discussion, that's wrong.
Yeah, sure.
We would do that in a petition.
Okay, so did we vote to table it, or?
We're about to. Did somebody second it? I made the motion, it was seconded?
Second.
So made and seconded, all those in favor? 4, 1 absent. All right, thank you very much. that, my glasses back on.
You wanna get this for 10 minutes?
I'm gonna take a quick break.
Yeah.
Let's have a 2-minute break, maybe 3 minutes. I'm not in favor of changing it. I'm not in favor of changing it. I'm a member of that group. It's not asking a lot. I think it's too much. Yeah. No, it's a big donation, and it's not something that's needed, that's just, you know, it's nice the town enjoy it, and that's, like I said, that's literally why I really like it. That's why I
Chris,
really
how you doing? Good to see you.
not what I think.
We started down there, are you?
Couple little changes,
Yeah. Favor of them. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure you're right. You're all over it.
And then I don't know where we stand on the north end of the building there, and
with the addition and,
engineering's been done on, roof changes, things like that.
And he goes on a roll, it's hard to stop him.
So I think we have to rebid it or something like that. You bid on it.
Yep.
Hopefully, obviously it would make sense that you would do it.
right. Well, we haven't bid on the addition yet.
Yeah, no, it hasn't happened yet. That hasn't happened.
Right.
This is just, this is what we're talking about tonight, it's just some additional things on the other side of the building.
Right,
Yeah.
the changes
Yeah.
that, from what we
Yeah,
originally.
so what left out of, you know, the current proposal is the north end of the building.
Right.
How you doing, Becky?
Change that, and we have done the engineering to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen it yet, or,
No, I haven't.
that's, it's almost in our hands, I guess, to put it under.
Who's watching your chair down the grill?
Pretty sure.
Who's watching your chair down the grill?
Did it,
Yeah.
Huh? You don't have a chair?
look at it, price it.
Just
I'm
keep
guessing we would probably, hopefully, we'd have about $67,000 left in the budget.
Oh, good, excellent, super.
Work with the addition.
67 to build the addition.
Potential. I don't know. What's that good? I don't have any idea what that's gonna cost.
Yeah.
It could well be more. So that may be something we don't want to do next year.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you do. Where it gets super costly is the whole time.
Yeah.
If it was just simply on
Yeah,
the side
no,
of the building.
I don't know how, I haven't seen it. Finished it.
I haven't either, but Chris was kind of trying to explain it to me.
Yeah.
It looked like there's some fairly complicated.
Yeah. But, you know, it's necessary. Plus, there's also the addition of storage, you know, in the gym there, probably on the corner. So, we'll see how it all comes down. What you wind up with.
Let's come back to order, please.
We'll talk more about that later.
Here, have your bathroom copy.
My bad, Mike.
Pull that up.
Don't talk about it, we don't have to go there. All right, discussion and possible action on 2020 warrant articles related to perpetuity articles. Town manager, you coming
Gotta
back?
love Becky's, yeah.
Be there, not over there. Thank you. By the way, I don't like your socks.
Oh, hey, whoa,
Just thought I'd mention it.
go to your room.
Okay.
You wanna talk about this, or we're gonna?
Yes, so Becky Seal and our own Mary Vogel studied the perpetuity articles a couple of years ago and found that there were more than a dozen instances in which the forever articles were either in conflict with one another and/or with what state law now is. And so Becky and I recently had a few discussions about that, and we decided that if we put all of those things in front of the voters all at once, it might be a little overwhelming for them.
Yes.
And so what we decided to do, I relied upon Becky's expertise as a former retired, or I guess currently retired, MMA attorney, to prioritize what are the things that are most pressing that we should address now as opposed to later. And so she came up with 6 forever articles, and her memo about those are in your packet, that we agree are the most pressing. We'll address the others in future years, but I asked Becky here so that she could sort of walk you through what each of these proposed changes is and why they are important.
Can I make one request? If you do this again, use a bigger font.
I just took what Becky submitted and provided to you
Do I have
guys.
to petition for the money to do the work on that one?
Put a proposal in, we'll
We'll consider it.
enter it. Go ahead, Becky, thank you.
I'm just wondering if you all had a chance to look at this, and whether we're going into this.
No, look
I've
at
looked
it.
it.
Okay.
Not sure I understood all of it.
Okay, well, I don't know if it's more productive for those of you who look at it to ask the questions, or if you want to have a chance to look at this and think about it more, and then I can come back, or what?
Oh, good, that's better. This is the same thing.
Well, Becky thought it'd be a good idea if you guys had a copy of what the articles as they are currently stated.
Yeah, yeah.
are.
Yes, that would be good.
Well, I don't know how much discussion is necessary on this. This is thing that should be done. And I yield to your good sense on this. You've always been, for a lawyer, you've always been pretty good.
In some of the further articles, and Mary and I were looking at this Benny's request, and they identified, Anthony said, we identified some that seem to be in conflict with each other. And so the goal of the particular one, I think, in terms of the length, and the two yards that were affected by it, is one of the taxpayer properties there. And that's the first proposal on the first page. And there are some towns that don't have that level of detail in the article, that deal with their board policy, where the article might say something like, see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to sell or dispose of property acquired through the tax lien foreclosure process in such terms and conditions as they deem in the town's best interest. And that's the article. And then the details will be fleshed out in the kind of policy that we have now. The sample that I put together is based on the kind of detail that's in the several existing articles. And I made a couple of changes. And I also asked you to consider whether you wanted to include some of the policy provisions in this article, or modify the policy, leave this article, go to the voters, and if the voters approve it, we modify that existing board policy. The one thing that I talked about with Denny last year, thinking that this might go to the voters last year, is the new law that deals with property sales where an elderly taxpayer who's using a homestead. So that's the reference in the proposed language in Title 36, Section 132-C.
I'm sorry, on that first article, proposed wording, you refer to personal property. Now, what is, that's not real property, in other words?
No, real estate would be one type of taxable property, and personal property would be things that the town acquires, like furniture, computers, or a photocopy, or that type of thing. And I didn't look at the policy manual to see whether the board currently has a personal property sale procedure. And I know you have a real estate, taxable property real estate procedure, because if you pointed that out to me, I got a copy that would help me, the town office staff. So, but when I was involved with the library board of trustees, and we were talking about furnishing the new library, I remember a discussion about a certain amount of expense having to go to bid, and that was, the personal property item. So that's what made me wonder, after drafting this, whether there might be some policy in the manual that relates to personal property sale or purchase, as well as the real estate, the taxable property real estate. And I don't know if you know.
I gotta say, Becky, in all the time I've been here, I don't believe that we've ever done anything with personal property. And if you look in the town report, there are people who just don't pay the taxes on the personal property for their business.
Oh, well, you don't
Year
tax
after
acquire,
year.
you know, you don't tax acquire personal property, you have to go to court to collect the money.
Right.
So that, but this article, and if you wanna move down to the, I guess it's the second proposal, that deals with selling town-owned personal property, but this isn't related to tax, anything that's acquired through lien foreclosure. That second article deals with property that the town has acquired, that's furniture or computers or, you know, trucks, whatever, types of personal property the town might own, and you wanna sell it. The existing perpetuity article,
I don't think I remember us actually selling any town
well,
property
I'm not
either.
saying that you have, because there is a reference in one of the existing perpetuity articles about personal property. And so, in the first article, I was proposing that we repeal that part of a perpetuity article, and that would leave a void on the personal property. And maybe your point is, why have a perpetuity article, just deal with it when it comes up? And that, I don't have an opinion on it yet, I was trying to eliminate conflicts or inconsistencies and fill some gaps that would result from some of the proposed repeal.
If I may, I can't imagine that at some point we won't be selling some personal property. And as an example, our facility maintenance work truck, we know we're going to have to replace that very soon. Well, once we replace that, what do we do with the current vehicle? Well, we would want to.
Trade it in
we'd want-
towards the one that you're
Well,
purchasing.
maybe, but I think what Becky's proposing is just a way of, an outline for how we would go about
Oh, I
doing that.
totally get that. I was just trying to think that that's what we've done in the past,
In
is
the
just,
perpetuity article list that you was given on the second page, down at the bottom, page 72, the first article at the top, which is Article 18, and so the fourth bullet here is the one that deals, well, the fourth bullet, throws in a bunch of different categories. One is tax acquired real estate, and then personal property belonging to the town. And it requires a due process to sell either one. And I was proposing to have the two articles that would address that in different ways. And repeal the existing language, that this is another article that is cited. I know this is an ideal location to be getting into the weeds on this, so I don't know if there's a better way to try to watch through this review, and I'm happy to spend the time that you can spend here.
No, it has to go to town anyway.
Thanks for your time that you put into this.
Yes,
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have at our disposal
Yes,
absolutely.
an attorney who's not being paid for this work.
thank you.
For the record, I'm no longer.
Understood.
Yes, Mary?
Mary Vogel. So the reason that Becky has proposed the two articles is because initially we had an article to sell foreclosed property, real property. Somewheres along the way, someone created another article that also added in the personal property. And so what she's looking to do is to separate those two articles because they really are two different things. Am I correct, Becky?
Right.
Right, they're two separate things.
Real and personal.
Right, real and personal being the town-owned property, not people's personal property. But that's the reason for creating the additional article for the personal property, to put a process in place that will give more the ability to dispose of personal property owned by the town.
What do you need from us tonight, today?
Well, ideally, we would like for you guys to approve this so that we can put it on the ballot, on the warrant article at the town meeting.
Did you have something to say? No?
yeah, so what I was just gonna say was the whole personal property thing. What I was envisioning was, because we had put a process in place that if you had not paid your taxes on your home for so many years, then there was a lien put on the property. So I was thinking the personal property was when you pay for your depreciation value, you get your printers, whatever, and you're paying those taxes to the town every year. So I thought that was where we were going with the personal property tax.
Distinct categories. One is property the town acquired through tax lien foreclosure, and that's the real estate. The other category is personal property property that the town owns because it bought it, and somebody made a donation of it. And what, if you decide you don't need that anymore, what process do you want to delegate to the select board to a perpetuity article that they can follow? And this wording for the second proposed article is make a distinction between the value of personal property being under a certain amount, at or under a certain amount with the goal that you might want to require a due process or you can proposal. If the tax acquired property real estate article is something that virtually every town in Maine, adopt something every year. Most towns don't have the perpetuity article to do with that. I don't think there's any good problem having an article that you include and for that it says that it will be effective until you go to replace it. But, so that the first article was one that the only goal was to try to eliminate the two conflicts and inconsistencies with the two that are in that list of perpetuity articles. And to also reflect that there was new law that deals with a certain category of tax acquired real estate, where there's a 65 or older tax rate.
If we wanted to sell a property, such as the discussion earlier about the Dalton property, that would not apply. That's not what we use.
That's not tax acquired property.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that would be something we bring to the town meeting and things like that.
yeah. Melanie?
Would it be possible, Becky, to make as part of this to sell or donate? Because then I have the other thought in my head that, what if we had cell phones that we were no longer using and we wanted to donate those to the Family Violence Project, or, so could that be part of the perpetual article that donating that property could also be part of it?
I don't see any problem with that, and this language would need to be modified to reflect that option. And this talks about, I think I used this, sell or dispose of, but if I didn't, that's how town articles typically are worded. To dispose of would necessarily mean that there was money changing hands. It'd have to be a public purpose, behind it, if you give to the town property, you weren't going to receive money for it. You can appropriate money to support charities, so as long as the cell phones, you need to go into a charity that would satisfy public purposes on that. So we come back to the first comment that I made, which is a lot of towns have a very simple one sentence to see if the town will vote to authorize the board and municipal officers to sell and dispose of tax acquired real estate on such terms and conditions as they deem advisable. And then you flesh that out in the kind of policy that you have now. So I guess that's one of the policy issues I wanted you to think about. You want to have this very detailed article, or you want to repeal the two that are cited here that are in the list, with the two articles that would go with the simple, the streamlined.
I would go with the simple.
Do we, if we were to adopt this or any other one, if we would adopt this, would we not want to fill in the blanks under the dollar amounts?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's why I left the blanks. I didn't begin to know, whether you didn't like the approach, but what dollar amount you want to be the trigger for a more,
Yeah, I wouldn't want to send it to the town like this. What do you want to do?
I frankly think simple is better, especially if you're gonna go to the vote.
Well, yeah, because you need to understand, but I don't think that's that complicated.
Okay.
Authorize the select board to sell town-owned personal property deemed by the board is no longer needed by the town, if the value is under whatever. Such sale, I don't think that's terribly complicated, do you?
I don't think that one is. I assume you were reacting to the first one, because the landscape plan was complicated. And that's the one I was saying, you could just tear this down and have see if the town will authorize the board to sell and dispose on such terms as you decide in the township's interest.
That's the one I learned.
And then as a board, you look at the existing policy that we may not decide if you want to modify that, but that would be the kind of meeting relative to. So we could go with the approach of having an article that repeal the existing portions of certain perpetuity articles that are cited, and then replace it with the following, and would be authorized for the sensible timeline.
Yes.
To
We
Sounds
should do
good.
that, and then we can vote on it. All right. But I wanna, thank you for all the time that
Boy,
you
thank
and
you so
Mary
much.
and Anthony put in on this.
So, I don't know, do you want to put those with the others, or do you want to move on to the next agenda item now?
Why don't, you wanna vote on any of them, or you wanna just put them all off and do them all at once?
Probably doing it all at once
Yeah.
makes sense.
Look at the others, see if there's any way you can simplify them.
Yeah, the other two actually, Mayor Goldman said, the other two actually, number five and six, yeah, number actually is 4 and 6 require, you to designate where the funds are going to be taken out of, because there is no designation as to where those
Right.
funds are being, paid out of.
Unappropriated.
Right. So undesignated funds, surplus, so that actually requires you to.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know I can't remember what building it's called, but a lot of towns call unappropriated surplus. Some towns call it general fund, and some call it.
Undesignated.
So that's, so there, if you wanted to.
Depends what week it is.
surplus, then you have to decide what you're gonna call that, and then use that term uniformly throughout the one way, so.
Number 6 actually could come right out of, excise tax. Out of revenue. So that's an option.
That's easy enough. Put those sources in.
I mean, revenues that aren't spent are gonna go into what I'm calling unappropriated surplus, so in my experience, sometimes it's easier just to use that sort of general phrase and that, but it's saying, excise tax revenues, is more acceptable. There's no legal reason why we could go in unappropriated surplus. But that blank is something you'll have to decide how you want to do it, and I just left the blank here so you know that that's a decision, policy decision you need to make before you put this in the meeting. Maybe, there were the two that are, number 3, number 4, those were articles that I thought needed to be revised in order to comply with state law, and so the explanation I provided is helpful or confusing, but, the number 3 is intended to be, protection for the tax collectors. Sometimes people can pay, taxes right away because they are, going out of the country and they want to get the check or they can
Right.
transfer electronically. And unless the assessors have delivered a tax commitment to the tax collector, the collector doesn't have any authority to accept that payment prior to paying the taxes. And when I worked at M&A, we pretty much uniformly agreed that that was an article that needed to be in the warrant annually. So I didn't feel comfortable with that as a perpetuity article, so that's what I'm proposing to repeal it, what you have now, and then this year would be a continuing article asking the voters to authorize the collector to accept prepaid taxes, and then that would have to be in every subsequent, and then the town had a charter, then I think that would be still, but put it in the charter, which is wrong, because that's one that needs to be voted on each year. And then the other one is number 4, in reference to municipal overlay is not really a separate fund, it's money that's generated by even round numbers when the assessor calculates the mill rate and applies that to the individual properties. And so, again, I was suggesting to repeal that, the existing article and make reference to whatever you're going to call it, unappropriated surplus, as the source of paying calculations
Anthony, would you be able to fill in those blanks, the 2 or 3 blanks that we've got?
Yes, I think, though, one point of clarification, so article, the first, number 1, we'll work just to simplify that into something that we will then make it into a policy.
Yep.
And then with number 2, there's a value there, so I want to make sure that I'm clear here. Do you want us to suggest a value to you, or do you guys want to Renee
Well, we
on
can
that.
always change it, so why don't you make a suggestion?
Okay, we'll make a suggestion, but I
Yep.
also think it'd be helpful if y'all think about sort of what ballpark y'all want to be in before we arrive at the next meeting. And then, as Mary suggested, on numbers 4 and 6, we can fill in those blanks with where we think the appropriate source of funding should come from.
Yeah. And then you'll rework it and bring the whole thing
I'll
back.
do what's number one, but the others, I think, it seems like, some of them, keep it the way they are, and fill in the blank. And the number that we plug in, a couple of them, I mean, that's a policy decision for you to
Yeah, yeah.
decide into. The other one that we haven't mentioned is number 5, which is, clarification that I thought was necessary. It was an article in last year's warrant, and I didn't understand for sure what the article was asking voters to do, and so this is my attempt to clarify, because it was adopted with perpetuity language in it, so it would go in the perpetuity article list that goes in this year's town report, right? So I showed you there what the wording was in the original article last year in my proposed revision. So you can think about whether you like the wording I'm proposing, and if you don't, you have some changes, I'd say what you're going to do.
Pretty straightforward.
It is pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty straightforward. I'm wondering if, maybe too much, but that article on, that we have to put a dollar amount in number 2.
Number 2.
We use that same $15,000.
Well, that's a pretty high bar if you're talking about, let's say, a used computer.
Mm-hmm.
True. Okay.
So,
And in fact, I'm not even sure any of our vehicles, by the time we sell them, would have $15,000 worth of value.
2 weeks after
you
we,
sort of bring them into the ground.
all right. See what you can do with it.
Okay.
Bring them all back and we'll vote on them all. Thank you very much.
Can I
Becky, yes.
add one thing to this?
Go ahead.
The perpetual article from 2010, the 2009 Article 52, to see if the town will continue to allow Troop 453 Belgrade Boy Scouts of America and Belgrade Girl Scouts to promote recycling.
Where are you?
We're on the bottom of the perpetuity articles that Becky gave us, bottom of the first page.
Oh, okay.
There's
I
no
just-
longer
this
a
one.
Boy Scout troop or a Girl Scout troop in the town of Belgrade that actually does the newspaper bundling and recycling. So I believe these are perpetual articles unless brought forward for the townspeople's vote, so I would assume that we can bring that one forward this year. And
We did talk about that one, and we thought, well, it might not be a crisis issue this year because of the lack of troops that's doing that, but I certainly have no problem with, having to go forward. I think Mary identified that when we were meeting last fall, as being something that might require some more research just to confirm that maybe it's that, sounds progress right. Anyway, that's certainly a decision that you folks can make and put that forward as well. And that would be pretty straightforward, if the town votes to repeal, perpetuity article that was adopted at the 2020 meeting, as Article 62.
Well, that seems pretty cut and dry. Yes.
It seems, this is one debate that I'm just making an observation, having been to the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, they may not exist right now, but the perpetuity article does not take away anything of just being there should troops arise at some point.
That was my
All
thought
of the
too.
Boy Scout equipment is mothballed, they didn't sell it, they didn't throw it away.
oh, believe me, that Girl Scout stuff is mothballed in my basement. Trust me.
Well, the thing
So they
is,
may resurrect themselves, is what you're saying.
But would it
But
still
will
be
they come
Boy
back- will
Scout
they-
troop number 453?
Yep.
well, I mean, I just don't, I can't see cluttering up the books with something that's not applicable at the moment. We can always put in another article or resurrect it in another town meeting. And not to mention the fact, as you say, how do we know it's gonna be Boy Scout Troop 453? It might be Boy Scout Troop whatever. They may not come back,
Use the same charter, but
I don't know. I thought they turned the charter in, to tell you the
I
truth.
know when we became Girl Scout Troop 4, 2011, it was some troop from a long time ago that had been disbanded, and they just reissued a number. So we became that Girl Scout troop, but it was not.
I don't,
Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts are
Oh, I know.
totally different.
yeah, yeah.
Right, because those Girl Scout leaders have never been.
If the
Okay.
Boy Scout or Girl Scout troop was reformed, I can't see the town turning it down if we took it to them and asked to reinstate this. I mean, can you?
Jeff's got something.
Jack?
I think if the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts want to reestablish operations over there, this article would be limiting any, this is talking about unruly music. Is that already been circulated? I don't think so. I think if and when the time comes, another article will pass easily. Modern news article.
We don't have much music left.
Don't have any news, that was, actually, that was a problem. It took them
okay.
forever to get the bundle paid.
Where do we want to go with this? We got some other agenda items we got to get to. What's next on this?
Okay, I don't know that we have to discuss that, we have to do anything.
So I
about
make
it.
a motion that we table this until the numbers are tucked in, and
Well, we've already,
bring it
I
back.
think we've already done that, haven't
have we made a motion?
No.
to
No.
table it?
We didn't
Okay.
vote on
Okay,
that.
I'll second your motion.
we? Made and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor? 4, 1 absent. Thank you.
Okay.
Possible action. Discussion and possible action on the following items from the town treasurer. 1, future use of reserves accounts. 2, timesheet update. 3, W-2 form update. 4, foreclosure update. 5, quarterly treasurer's report.
All right.
These just, you're just reporting to us, Mary, or do we have to vote on something here?
No, I want to do some food for thought.
You what?
Food for
I'm
thought.
going to do some food for thought.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so I'm gonna go very quickly down through these, I'm assuming that, you've had time to look at the report that was provided, but I'm gonna start with future use of the reserve accounts. So, the reserve accounts are currently what is called people, meaning they're not,
Mayor,
monies
just-
that are set aside in separate accounts. They are part of our operational account, and the way that they are set up, they're also part of, taxes that have been paid, this kind of thing. There's no way for me to be able to, apply interest to those reserve accounts, and by law, interest is supposed to be being applied to each of those reserve accounts. For tracking purposes, it's a little bit difficult, so I want to think about doing something after the new year, and reestablishing those as physical accounts, which starts in July of 2016. I did get in touch with the bank, I asked them what happened, when it happened, and they provided me a lot of backup information, so, anyway, that's just some information that I want you to think about, because I know you do have other people here tonight. The timesheets, so the timesheet, is going fairly well. We only have, one department that's not using the timesheet. I'd like to continue until after the new year, talk to Anthony about it after that time, see how he feels it's going. And, I mean, for me, it's great. I'm not sitting there counting minutes.
I'll just count on myself. Well, the whole point of the timesheet, the written timesheet, so bringing it back to us was not whether or not it was working.
Okay.
It was whether or not there was a difference in the hours that were being reported from people clocking in and out and being held responsible for that to the written time. That was what we were trying to make sure was
So
happening.
you are spending less with these timesheets than you were spending with the clocks, because I had to account for every minute, and it's a 7-minute policy, so that 7 minutes, if anybody is, early or late, is counted as a pay time, that's a 15-minute pay time.
So from my perspective, I think that you're safe in that area. Am I answering your question now?
Yeah, I think that we just wanted to know, if, like, overall hours, if we noticed a difference with what we're paying out, because that was the whole.
Yeah, and not, it's not 40.75 hours. And so I'm not having to count that extra time out, the 0.75 each week, which was occurring because when you have a time clock, you have to keep accurate record for auditing purposes. So I feel it's going fairly well. Okay. So, and moving on, W-2 form updates from Social Security and IRS. Haven't heard a word, so no news is good news. Yeah, I really haven't heard a word since we sent it out. I know that some people, filed theirs and do their accounting and everything is fine. So, this would be the time of year I'm gonna hear though in this month, so.
Were there some sort of fines or something you're supposed to pay, or no?
We were subject to fines.
It never happened.
Not yet.
We didn't get it taken care of. I did, speak to them and they just said, yeah,
Okay. So there were no fines paid? Okay.
Alright, and foreclosure updates, which will be going out, by the end of this week, the foreclosures, or the first of next week. I will have to do another one, so I'll have to, actually, I might see if I can get to it on that. But those, we have about 15 right now, and I expect that most of those people are gonna come in and pay. I've sent out 2 courtesy, notices to people when I talk to them, so saying, hey, come in and work with us, so. Okay, so that's just, FYI that that's going on.
Mary, can I have you just hold it for a second? The time card policy, do we need to vote to allow that to continue through the first of the year? Because originally voted for the change in the policy to be in effect for 3 months. It's now been in effect for a little bit longer than that, but because it is a change in a personnel policy or a timekeeping policy, should we?
It was a trial.
Right, it was a trial. So she's asking to continue the trial till after the first of the year. So we should probably vote on that and to
Make a motion.
authorize it. Make a motion that we authorize the use of the time cards to continue until after the first of the year,
No second.
2020.
Any other discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? 4, 1 absent.
Okay. So everybody has quarterly expense report. Do you want me to read down through this? Most of you already read through this.
No.
Just, yeah, if you have, questions, we'll address them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think the only things that show up as concerns are the facilities, and we're gonna find when we get to the budget process that we're over on heating, we're over on electrical. We had some unforeseen expenses that, which some of those, facility budgets over. I don't really see, we're pretty, as far as our expenses right now, there are a couple of things that we're over, but we're not over the line
Well,
budget.
the main thing to consider is that through the November 1st, we were about through 83% of the budget year. And you can see all of those numbers are within that.
The town garage, however, is 151% expended.
We've had,
I don't know, that doesn't look on par to me.
Well, I'm talking about, Melanie, when you look at the departmental for facility maintenance overall, it's at 71% compared to 83% of the budget year. Let me see if I can find
we've
it.
had some unforeseen expenses, because mostly, the garage door, going on the back, replacement. I did not figure out exactly what these expenses were.
So Mary's right, so we didn't budget anything for repairs and maintenance for the garage this year, and we've spent about $1,100 in repairs and maintenance at the garage.
So then you don't budget anything then automatically,
Yeah.
budget over, even though we're not over the
So that doesn't come out of like the facilities maintenance, and then that covers that for the town garage, because we don't have any portion of the budget that is set for routine maintenance or upkeep on town properties? We do.
Each department has a separate line for repair.
Yeah, each facility has its own budget.
There was no budget.
So again, this sort of underscores the importance of the discussion we had at the last meeting about having some flexibility within your departmental budgets. Because yes, we're way over on the garage, but as a whole, for the Department of Facility Maintenance, we're well under budget.
Right, but my thought was that was the purpose of us having the facilities maintenance, having the account so that anything that needed to be done to each building was under one header, but, so we didn't essentially say, okay, so here's $15,000 in this, and it goes to cover any unforeseen expenditures under the facilities, so it's not, was it essentially divided out between them?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, every facility has its own budget, and each one of those budgets has things like electricity, heating, rentals, repair and maintenance.
Right, and I know a lot of that was that whole transparency thing, but then.
Well, and
perhaps-
it's good, it's also good for accounting and budgeting.
Right, but I think, yeah, so, and I know, and this was the whole fire department discussion, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so if you just had an umbrella $15,000 repair budget, then who's to say that the fire department wouldn't want to spend $14,000 of that, leaving $1,000 for all the other facilities? And so that's why it's good to have it broken down by facility, just so that there's, again, if you have some flexibility within the departmental budget, but you still have some idea of what your spending is for each of those, so that you can budget appropriately for the next year.
I have some thoughts on how to do that, but not for right now.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to mention, just about what Mary said earlier on number one there, the first thing she spoke about, the future use of reserve accounts. And so you guys are clear what we are recommending, and you guys can just marinate on this a little bit, is that we reestablish those physical accounts for those reserve funds.
Because there's no way that we can show in the town report the beginning balance, and we can show the beginning balance, but there's no, that you're gonna see only those monies that go in, there's no interest, in the town report, and they go to reserves right now.
And again, it just provides a better system of accounting for what's available where.
So, does anybody have any other questions?
Something to think about, just comes up. If you show the interest, if you show the in at the beginning of the year, the out at the end of the year, the transactions during the year, the interest and why the interest, we have the mechanism in the unified trust, is to put one item for each of the reserve accounts in there, and use that as a model. Person
Kind
who
of
wants to do
what we
it.
used to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
But do it in tabular form, not one item at a time, not
Right.
pages and pages and independent report.
So you have an expense report, you have a revenue report, and those are, both up to date, and that's a good option,
I appreciate that, because I know it took a while to get up and running.
Thank you
So,
very much.
Thank you.
Good job. I think you're doing very well, considering what you had to deal with coming in.
She's very conscientious.
I noticed. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mary.
All right, we ready to move on to the next item is, put your glasses on, Mike.
Improvements at Centerville.
This, discussion, possible action on following improvements to Center for All Seasons. One, acceptance of efficiency main and Nature Conservancy grants to offset LED lighting conversion with the balance paid from the Recreation Capital Reserve. Two, proposed exterior renovation add-ons totaling $12,500.
So what I'd like to do, Mr. Chair, is talk about both of these together so that because what you decide to do with one may impact what you want to do with the other. And I'll talk first of all about the lighting conversion at the Center for All Seasons. We talked about this at the last meeting where I received some information from the Nature Conservancy where they were incentivizing the conversion of municipal facilities to LED lighting. Thank you. And so we got word on Friday that we received about $2,100 from the Nature Conservancy to add to the $4,200 for Efficiency Maine for a total of $6,283. Now, the total cost of the project is almost $16,000. So when you subtract that, the incentives and the grants from the total project cost, that leaves $9,583 that would have to come from the Recreation Capital Reserve. And at the last meeting, you guys said that you were open to considering that. And again, this would be for converting all of our lighting, both inside and outside the building, to LEDs. So that's the lighting portion of this. As far as the
Was that bid?
Yes. Well, so what happens is that the Nature Conservancy, you use one of their qualified partners in order to qualify for the bid or for the grant. And so their closest qualified partner was in Winslow. It was Ideal Electric. And so Ideal Electric is the one who came in, did the inspection, put together the estimate for which then Efficiency Maine and the Nature Conservancy looked at that and determined what incentive they would grant as part of that project.
Okay,
Okay.
so we still have to raise almost $10,000.
Yes, sir, $9,583 from the capital reserve. And as of the end of the year, that reserve stood at $172,494. So it's a healthy reserve until you consider that we have also contracted for the exterior renovation of the Center for All Seasons at a contract price of $54,800. And I received an email recently from Chris Poirier, who is here today. He is a vice president at Maine Energy Pros. And after a couple of project walkthroughs, they found another $12,500 in needs for that project. So if you added that to our contract price with Maine Energy Pros, that would raise the project's cost to $67,300. Now, in addition to that, the supplies, Hammond has sent us an estimated cost of more than $31,000 for the materials for that. So that would raise the total project cost to nearly $99,000. So if you were to, when you subtract the $54,800 for the contract with Maine Energy Pros from the $172,000 capital reserve, and then you subtracted the additional $12,500, then the additional $31,000 for materials, and the additional nearly $10,000 for the LED. If we did all of those things, that would leave $64,000 in that capital reserve. But I asked Mr. Poirier here tonight so that he could explain the need for this additional $12,500 in expenses for the exterior renovation.
Why did you want to separate these two items? Seems to me they should be separate.
Because I think if you decide to do the whole kit and caboodle with the exterior renovation, you may feel uncomfortable with drawing down that capital reserve down to $64,000. You may feel like we get great leverage for the $10,000 that we spend on LED lighting by getting the additional $6,300 in grants. So that seems like a smart thing to do, but we're unsure whether or not we want to do the full $99,000 exterior renovation. So, you know, as I said before, what you do with one may influence what you want to do with the other.
Go ahead. I was gonna say, this thing started out with basically replacing the siding, and it seems to have mushroomed. Am I wrong on that?
Well, it's, there's a couple things that I see in this, in that, there's been a lot of cooks in the kitchen here. You know, we started to look at this when Les was leaving, and we didn't have a maintenance director, and so Andy and I stepped in to sort of steer this to some degree. That's when we met with Chris, and we put it out to bid originally, and Chris, you know, got the bid on it. And so it's just since then, Chris Dutil's been added as the maintenance director, and, you know, another set of eyes, you know, and then I think getting a little more detailed about it in terms of more so than I did and Andy did. And in the course of actually doing the work, you know, delving a little deeper to get the building done correctly. You know, this is a lot of money, but I mean, this is, it's kind of being done ideally that we're not gonna have to touch this building for quite a long time in many ways. You know, we're not doing anything with the wood under the porch, you know, and that potentially will have to be stained or painted or something down the line, but it's not exposed to weather, so, you know, that's a further down the line kind of thing. But and we're doing a number of things that are gonna tighten the building up to some degree and make it easier to heat. I can foresee, well, there still is some further work to be done, because this is all in regards to every side of the building except the north end of the building, which the north end of the building, as some of you are aware, has been sent out for engineering to potentially change the roof system a little bit to fix it correctly, because that side of the building has tremendous snow load problems, and by doing this kind of work, cosmetic work, if you will, that we're doing on the other sides of the building, on the north end of the building, it would just largely be throwing money down a hole, because the ice buildup there and so forth is the way it's currently situated isn't right. So I think that you know, I've looked over what these additional items have, you know, how they're enumerated here, and it all seems like, you know, perfectly good things to me. In some of these things, as they were looked at closer, you know, rot was found behind them and things like that. And so, you know, it's been my opinion, and I think I speak for the boards here, in that when we do these things to the town buildings, especially this building, we do them, fix them right, so that this board and the board after us, and 10 years from now, and the boards aren't going to have to deal with these problems on the perennial basis that other boards have. And so we're on a track here to be spending my money, a lot of money, but spending it wisely on this building so that it lasts for a long time and it's quality work. Now keep in mind that out of this $64,000 capital reserve balance budget, after this work is done, assuming we approve the extra work and the lighting, the engineering work has been done on the north end of the building, and we're about to get that, I think.
We just received
we
the
just
plans
received it.
just late last week.
So, you know, that will potentially go out to bid for the, so that end of the building can be done perhaps in conjunction with this work, or at the tail end of this work, so that the whole building, all four sides of it, not just three sides of it, will be completed. And but that's going to be a sizable cost, and you know, it could well be that this amount will cover it. It could well be it won't, and you know, we may have to you know, plan to do that next year or something like that when we have some more money in that account. But there again, that's another noted design flaw in that building that everybody's been playing catch up with for years and years and years. And so if we expend the money and take the time to do it right, fix it, you know, we're talking, I don't know, what are we talking, 20, 30 years of maintenance-free use, largely, for the main exterior of this building that's exposed to weather. And that's just the way, we find ourselves with this building, so, any other questions? Go ahead.
I'm trying to
Thank you.
picture where, sorry. I'm trying to picture where 14 windows are that don't go to anything.
Well, if you look at that building right now, they were put there for design flourishes or something like that. They're just, they don't go to anything.
Little windows
Picture a
up top
couple
of
of them,
that.
but I'm
Not
like,
all of them.
14
I mean,
of them?
there are some windows that are clerestory windows in the gym that go through to the gym, and those stay, and those get repaired if need be. But there's some actual windows that don't go anywhere, that the snow and ice has fallen off and broken, and they don't go anywhere. And potentially, they cause some heat loss. And so it just, it seems foolish to replace them. And so we'll just be,
I
you know,
guess pictures would be good to like accompany this stuff, because I'm trying to picture it, and I
Yeah.
will own it. It's been a while since I've been in the building.
yeah,
Last time I was, it was dark.
sure. Yeah.
Linda's got something.
So, when you're in the gym, there's a door up, like, at the second level, there's only a ladder over to, and you get up in there, and I think there's
Which is where they've done
windows
some of the heat.
into there. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. But they're,
Because it sounds like they're exterior, and that they're
Yeah.
gonna be plywooded on the outside.
And then she used that.
yeah. They're
So
just for looks.
actually-
They were just a design option for looks, and we don't need them anymore, and they don't, the trim around them in some cases has rotted, and ideally, you know, quite possibly, they do allow heat loss, and, so we'll keep the windows where they're needed and where they're useful, and get rid of the windows that are just fake.
And it's not gonna look horrible.
No,
with
no, it's
insulation
gonna
and
have
plywood
continuity
over
to
this.
it, yeah.
Because I'm like, could we just replace the panes of glass with plexiglass, still maintain the integrity of the look that was originally intended? And
Well, some things that have a look in that building, in the original design, like the chimney, for instance. Spent a lot of money on that chimney, but that fireplace doesn't work. And, so it's, the ambiance is exquisite, but the cost would have been so much better spent at the time the building was built on insulation, on other items that would have, the metal roof, which was done after the fact. And, but yet, you know, with the people that built the building, somebody wanted that chimney, perhaps a donor, I don't know. And that was how that came to be, and it looks wonderful, but it's not useful.
I thought it was used originally, but then we couldn't use it because of insurance.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
What about putting a gas fire?
I was just
gas
gonna
fire?
say, could we do a gas insert or something that is usable?
Like at the library.
I think that's a great idea, and I think, as far as heating goes, I can see in the next year or so, we commission what do they call it, a heating, an energy audit, where we identify areas where we could improve the insulation, where perhaps we can improve heating with a gas fireplace if it works. Or Bruce Galouche, who, you know, oversees the heating there, has stated that, you know, at some point, we need to do some updates or changes to the heating system itself, which is costing us a lot of money, and, but, so we'll see. I mean, I think there's a way to make that building in the next year or two, with this work and the north end of the building work, we're gonna tighten it up, and then in the next year or two, we go a little further with an energy audit and a heating system, you know, consideration. Then we'll have pretty much crossed our Ts and dotted our Is with that building for a long time to come. And we won't have to be sitting here expending money on that building for a period of time, a good long period of time, hope, you know, so.
Anthony, the $98,842, that's for everything?
That's for everything.
The lighting,
No,
it's not for the light, it's not for everything then?
it's everything with the exterior renovation. So that's the initial $54,800 contract that we signed with Maine Energy Pros. It's the additional $12,500 that they are proposing, and the extra work that's in Chris's email that he sent us. And then it is the $31,000 plus in supplies from Hammond.
So but the balance that you have at the bottom of the memo page here of $64,069 is the balance after the lighting LED money is taken out and the total cost of the renovation.
That is correct.
Minus, now keep in mind, this is minus the north end of the building, which we have yet to determine what that cost will be.
Right.
And so, you know, at some point in the not-too-distant future, we may be
Yeah,
looking
we'll-
at how we might spend that
Yeah,
out
we'll-
of that $64,000 if once we get costs on that part of the building.
Yeah, we'll put that out for bid and
Yeah.
find out
Yeah,
what it's gonna cost.
sure.
How do you feel about spending it down that far, Linda?
Well, I'm wondering if it wouldn't be prudent to consider a warrant article to raise some money for north end of the building.
Yeah.
Because I'm a little concerned about totally draining.
No, you're right.
Because their furnace could go.
Sure.
And that could be a $10,000.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I've always liked the idea of having about 50,000
Mm-hmm.
on hand
Sure.
for that building.
Sure.
Because that would take care of
Yeah.
90% of the kind of random events that might happen.
Well, this is pretty close to $64,000 left, is pretty close to that $50,000.
Yeah.
I think that what you're suggesting is probably a better way to go than spending it all down.
I would think that we would probably have to do that, depending upon how urgent we felt the need was to get that north side done.
Well, unless the wall's gonna collapse this winter.
Well, it's not gonna get done this winter.
That's correct.
So so that's, you know, that's
So I
a
don't see any rush then.
good thing or a bad thing, but yet, you know,
But we can get started with the exterior renovation.
Yes.
If we approve this.
Yes.
And Chris may want to speak to how quickly they could start and get that work done.
That's Mr. Poirier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
roughly at this point, because we started another project, because this was, we had to wait until.
Taking
the-
forever,
this board
because
meeting.
this was
But about 2
approved in
weeks
March.
we'll start, and it's an 8 to 10 week project for us, 8 to 12 weeks.
Can you, go ahead.
Are we gonna run into, it's too cold, there's ice buildup, we can't get in there and do this, so an 8 to 10 week project is realistic or not realistic in November and December?
Yeah, December, January, February.
Right.
Yeah. That could make it harder and take longer, yeah. If we have 3 days of blizzard, we're not working
Yeah.
those 3 days.
Sure.
You know, and it's gonna take some coordination with the town in order to get plowing and snow moved away from the building and things like that.
Well, that was my other thought here too, is,
I mean, yeah, but that's kind of on us, if it sends out in another couple of weeks, I mean, it's just, that could happen.
Not gonna be more expensive because you're working through the winter.
No.
No.
Can you,
well, it will be if the town is expending facilities maintenance time and resources to go in and have to clear snow away from the actual building, where at this point they don't have to. So there is an added expense to that.
I mean, the construction side, of course, but it doesn't really matter. Can you explain that the work that you're gonna do, you're proposing to do, what's the total amount? It's not 12,500, that's an additional amount.
It would be 67,300.
Can you explain to me what that's gonna pay for? What are you gonna do for that?
Sure. So, when we originally went through with Ernie, the intent was to make the building maintenance-free for 30 years, like you said, and do it right. So, we basically put a work scope together that made it so that, again, I'm just stating what you just stated, that for the next 30 years, nobody's gonna have to go back and redo things, which is kind of been the case from what I understand. 10 years ago, I looked at this building to do insulation work on it because there were major insulation issues. So we basically spent 2 or 3 hours there putting the work scope together. I went back and typed it all up and sent it, as part of my bid. But, from removing, so we're gonna take all the siding off the building on the we're gonna take this product called Blue Skin, and which is a really high quality, exterior, wrapping around the building that's gonna make it airtight. So there's not gonna, you're getting a lot of heat loss in it, out of that building, because it's not air sealed well, probably not insulated all that well either, but at least it's not air sealed well. So there's a lot of cold coming in that building. This is gonna stop all the airflow into the building. So that's a much more expensive product than just normal building wrap, and it's a lot more labor intensive to put on. Then we're gonna basically side the building. We're gonna put shingles, like vinyl shingles at the top, vinyl siding at the bottom, and it's kind of a higher end product that, you know, when you hit it, it's not gonna crack, it's gonna last a long time, it's not gonna fade. But there's extra work involved with installing this type of product. You know, so for example, it's really thick, so you have to shim out all of the trim that you put in the building before you put the trim on. So it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet of trim that need to be brought out a little bit so that this siding slides into it. We're gonna use all J-channel, so everything on the building will be vinyl, so zero defects.
So one of the things I had asked about when we first were talking about this project is if you're gonna do vinyl shingles on the top and then you're gonna do vinyl siding on the bottom, there's gonna be trim board in between, and originally the project was calling for not vinyl trim board, but was calling for, you know, something that we were gonna then have to be replacing and upkeeping. Has that been remedied?
Yeah, it'll be a vinyl trim board with like J at the bottom, so the siding will go up into it. And then there'll be like a metal drip edge that goes on top of that board up behind the shingles. So yes, it'll be 100% vinyl.
Because I was like, well, that's kind of silly, why?
And we're taking off like the freeze board at the top and the board at the bottom, instead of just wrapping those in metal, which isn't gonna look very good, especially when you're doing a high quality siding like that. We're just gonna remove those and just go from top to that transition board with the siding. And then we're gonna remove the freeze board at the top where the soffit is, and we're just gonna go right up to the soffit with the shingle siding. It'll just look a lot cleaner.
So this extra 12,500 is basically to take care of rot that you're finding now, is that correct?
Yeah, so there's like 11 things on there, but I would say the main things that covers are, because, you know, we had talked briefly, when we did the walkthrough, there was mention that there might be some windows that go to nowhere, but we never talked about actually taking out the windows, framing them, putting sheathing on it, and then insulating the windows. That was never part of the original scope. So that's one, and I believe there's 14 windows that need to be done, so that's one major thing. The other major thing is the whole back steps, you know, where that porch is on the east side. There's some 14-foot steps there, so like 3 or 4 steps that goes out. Those we were just gonna replace the decking boards, but when we got into it with Chris, we found out that there's a lot of rot. So those steps basically just need to come out and be rebuilt. Then you know where all those columns are on the west side?
Yep.
There's like 12 columns there. They're there, I mean, I don't know why there's 12 columns. So what we were gonna originally do was just put like a vinyl wrap around those, right? And we had kinda talked about it, the vinyl wrap, once it goes around those, it's just gonna be so compact that it'll all look like one big piece of vinyl. It won't really look that good. And then at the top, there's not really enough room to put like some trim around it, because it'll bump into each other. So what we had talked about is just taking those out, because they're not really supporting that much. I think they're just for aesthetics. So we're just gonna put 4 big beams there, and then wrap those, and it'll just look a lot cleaner.
Sure.
And then, you know, those are the 3 main things, but there's, you know, 6 or 7, there's 11 lines, but, you know, the windows are on 3 separate lines. And there's a few other things.
What do you mean by a window, like window to nowhere?
Yeah.
Is that a solid window, I mean, or what is that?
It's a regular window to nowhere. It's just to the attic. Well, it's to somewhere,
Yeah.
but it's to the attic, so when you're inside the
I think
building,
it's not something that's useful, you can't look through it, in other words.
You
No.
can look in, but you can't look out.
It's just
No.
for,
Way up high to look.
it's just for
if
aesthetic.
you're
Bigger
in the
on the-
attic, you can
Yeah.
look out, but-
Bigger on the inside than on the outside?
and they're all on the second story.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like four on one side, four on the other side, and then on the south side, I believe there's 6.
You're apparently not familiar with the TARDIS yet.
No.
Yes.
I have a question, this new skin wrap sounds really nice, but it is trap moisture in if there's not a really good liquid area behind the inner wall. It's all like kind of deep down, and I'm thinking that there may not be a really good liquid area. And if that's the case, there could be condensation in the wall.
Yeah. You just want it is important that the building is ventilated properly.
Has that been incorporated into this decision-making process or on the list for future?
Yeah. What we put up there anyway is fairly, it's fairly, it will block a lot of the moisture coming out, just not quite as much. It'll block a lot of the moisture, but it will let air go in and out of it, which is not good when you're trying to heat it. I really highly doubt that it's gonna cause any moisture issues. I mean, you put it on homes all the time, without issues, right?
Oh, but trust me, if there's gonna be an issue, it's gonna be at the center.
Yes.
That's true.
Yeah. The only thing is, like, you don't have to do it, but if you don't do it, I mean, I can't quantify how much it's gonna reduce your heating bill there, but it's gonna be fairly significant.
Considering we don't really have anything there at all now, I mean, other than, I think there's probably some Typar or whatever that was put
Yeah.
on, way back when,
Yeah.
but, it's a step in the right direction anyway, and, I think whatever ventilation or, heating-related issues that come up, maybe because of this, we can address through the energy audit and, possible ways to add ventilation if we need to, but in general, there's a fair amount of ventilation that comes in and out of that building just from
And
use.
I don't think you have really all that high of a level of humidity in the building.
On Wednesday nights, it's incredibly humid.
Is it really? Why is that?
That's what.
Oh, 'cause a lot of people sweating? Yeah.
Yeah, like 35 of them.
Jack, did you have something?
Yeah, Jack, I can't resist saying that, speaking of airflow, that building is designed with airlocks on the two main entrances. There are 2 sets of doors out and 2 sets of doors as you come in. And every time I've been there that I can remember, the last time was election day,
Doors open.
the interior says is blocked open.
Yep.
So every time the door is open, everybody comes in and out, there's a rush
Yep.
of air back and forth. There's some operational things that need to be paid attention to as well.
And those doors, I think, are slated to be replaced too, right? And isn't Chris gonna do that or something? Yeah, so they'll be tighter, because the outer doors are failing, and, that's a separate issue that's being taken care of.
Well, the inner doors can't be, because they're always open.
I think your
Yeah.
thought on the building breathing, I think that's really good that you brought that up. And that's something that when we do an energy audit, the energy auditor will look at that, and part of his proposal may or may not be proper ventilation. Because you want to make a building as tight as you possibly can, and then ventilate it right. So that is something that the energy auditor will be able to look at when they do the lower doors on the building. They'll be able to look at how tight it is.
Melanie?
So we should do the energy audit after we wrap this in this thing, that we're not really sure whether or not it's going to be
Nothing's gonna
beneficial?
happen. There'll be no issues in that building. You're losing a lot up through the nothing, it won't cause any problems in the next year or two, 100%.
Oh, we're looking for the next 30 years.
Well,
Yeah.
like, between now and when you do an energy audit.
Yeah.
And now
So,
is
but
the
then what
time.
happens if then we do an energy audit and they're like, oh, this is a really
I
bad plan?
don't think though, that building will be too tight, but let's say that theoretically it is, then you have to make sure that you have the appropriate ventilation. in your building.
So we would then what, add windows to somewhere?
No, well, you put in like a ventilation unit that would take air out of the building.
Some venting. I think part of the reason we have the terrible ice
But
buildup
it's
on that building.
highly unlikely
Yeah,
that you'll have to do that.
So, well, but we'll, yeah, we'll.
Paul,
Tom Barrow.
Tom,
Question, is there an opportunity to add insulation on the exterior once everything's stripped off, rather than just wrapping it, adding, some thin layer of foam insulation?
Well, that's certainly an option, but I think that we chose the blue skin as sort of the sort of least expensive insulated option.
Yeah, that's gonna do the air sealing. There's two things you can do to the exterior, is you can air seal and insulate. I mean, I'm sure you have rolled fiberglass in the walls. If you could put insulation on the outside, but, and it would help, you could put an inch, a half an inch, whatever, an inch on the outside, but it would increase the cost significantly.
A lot, yeah. We looked into that, and that was really quite a cost.
Big jump in the price. And I think the blue skin is gonna make a big difference, because air sealing is basically as effective as insulation. Insulation without air sealing is no more effective than just pure air sealing.
all right, Anthony, what do we have to do tonight?
Correct.
Anthony, what do we have to do tonight?
Well, ideally, you would approve both of these projects, because they're both worthy projects. But that depends upon your comfort level of taking the capital reserve down from 172 to 64.
I'm comfortable with that. I make the motion, we approve these two projects, and
Second.
Made and seconded, any other discussion?
Tom, did you have a question?
My only concern would be that the energy audit would come back and say that there was a deficiency in the insulation in the exterior walls. This would be potentially an opportunity to address it. I'm just bringing it up on the list.
Yeah. As we talked about the energy audit, and Chris has a little experience with this, because you looked at the building for an energy insulative issue some time ago. Our thought is that the energy audit's basically gonna show some deficiencies in the roof line, where there's, potentially some lack of airflow in the eaves and or lack of insulation in those areas. And so ideally, after this work is done and an energy audit is done, the places where the building is deemed insufficient with insulation potentially could be blown in or foamed in where needed, and or ventilation in the eaves to keep the ice from building up and so forth would be adjusted or added at that time. We're under the impression that what we're doing with this blue skin and with the thick composite siding that we're putting on is going to make quite a bit of difference in the walls insulation. So it's sort of hard to. We know we have to do the siding. We're doing it as best we can with the sort of an inexpensive insulation idea of the blue skin.
Well, it sounds like blue skin is not inexpensive. I don't think
Well,
one time I
compared-
heard you say,
Compared to
this is
foam
really.
board,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
it's extremely
Yeah,
inexpensive.
it was something we actually added because when we first looked at this, we were just gonna do the siding. And then we said, well, gee, we knew that a lot of the backer board at the lower parts of the building were rotted and we were gonna have to replace all that. And,
Oh, and it's a moisture barrier, so yeah, that's the other thing. Any water, it won't go through it from the
Yeah.
outside. So if you get some snow up against the building, that somehow gets behind the siding, let's say, it's gonna stop at that vapor barrier and not rock the sheathing behind the siding, which you have issues with now.
But now, so.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
I think you'd asked for any more discussion, which was come on, right?
We have plenty of discussion. Take a vote now. All in favor? Opposed? I'm opposed for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not comfortable with it. Yes, it needs to be done. I'm not comfortable with drawing that reserve down that far. And two, I kind of feel an obligation to represent Ricky, because I know he'd vote if he was here. I think he does. So, guys.
So perhaps we should take these individually, or is the vote that we just want to not do either one of them?
Well, you combine them.
I didn't actually make the motion, so what I might suggest then is maybe you guys would consider these projects individually.
The lighting and the.
No, the lighting, one motion.
And the construction,
The renovate the exterior, another motion.
Sure, I guess so. Yeah. I think, if
So
I
how do
may-
we unvote a vote?
You don't. You're going to have a new motion on voting. on
Well,
it.
actually, when there's a 2 and 2 and there's a tie, the motion's actually dead.
It's dead.
Okay, so do we want to make another motion then? So we'll make a motion that we
Well, you,
approve the LED lighting?
Can we have a little bit more discussion, is that a possibility?
go ahead.
So I'd just like to say, before you vote, I've turned down a lot of work over the next 3 months. And so I've got 5 guys that potentially I won't have work for the next 10 weeks if you vote this down. And we have a contract already for everything except for the additional work.
Mhm.
So those are 2 things I think that are very important to take into consideration.
Mhm.
Because that's, nearly half of my workforce that,
Mhm.
I'm gonna potentially have to lay off.
Well, if I might say something, I think at some point, we make plans to do these things to these buildings. We make plans to spend a lot of money on fire trucks. We make plans to, we're making plans to potentially build a new fire station, buy land for that and so forth. And that costs real money. And these are buildings that have to be maintained and taken care of, and equipment that has to be updated. And yeah, it's a lot of money, and it hurts to spend that money. But, and it hurts me to spend that money on this building, because this building we shouldn't have to be spending this money on this building if it was built right in the first place. However, that's woulda, coulda, shoulda. That's in the past. This is what we have for a building, and we've stepped out and we've gotten a bid. We're doing, good work on a building that we want to keep in good repair. And I just, it's great to have our principals and say, oh my goodness, we don't want to spend this money, and so we'll vote down this and vote down that. But I mean, we've already made a statement in that we want to get this done, and I just think we come up short when we decide at the last minute not to vote for these things that we've already stated we want to get done.
That's not entirely fair, because we were looking at a different set of figures in the beginning.
Well,
And it's, as I say, it's grown. And I understand what you're saying. Yeah, we gotta take care of the building, and I'm not really against that. Are you fairly comfortable with getting along on $64,000 for emergencies in the next year?
In the discussion.
I'm gonna put more in.
Mhm.
So.
She just mentioned something about $50,000 being sort of the ballpark figure where we really don't want to get below that, perhaps. And I agree with
Unless
you.
it's an emergency.
I agree with you. We're gonna have to come, we don't have a figure for the north end of the building right now. And, that's not gonna get done this year. So, it's something we're gonna have to address in the coming year. We will have more funds to address it with. But, a warrant article, like you state, that might be something we can do at that time, but that's a separate issue from what we're talking about right now. And yeah, I don't wanna draw that down any lower than this.
Melanie?
Okay, so here's my reason why my hand went up on no. This started last year. We carried the money forward to make sure this project would get done this year. We had discussions months ago about making sure that the north side of the building was part of this overall project. I asked if we could revise the contract with you to make sure that it was the same person doing it, because I am tired of the Band-Aid on the Center for All Seasons. Somehow we're still only doing 3 sides of the building. And the cost continues to grow. And I understand that, you know, we started to do this and then we found rot, but this was all analyzed before the original proposal was done. And so I don't understand how that wasn't noticed before, like the rot didn't just start over the summertime. So I feel frustrated by the process. I feel like we are once again going to do 3 sides. You may not get the contract for the 4th side, so then we're gonna have somebody totally different doing it, who could potentially be looking at doing something totally different on that end of the building, who says, hey, I hate that blue stuff, I'm not doing that.
Well, they would do what you told them.
Yeah, so keep in mind, Chris's company is not a construction company. So they're not going to be building the addition to the north side of the building. However, we can ask the general contractor to subcontract with them for the blue skin and the siding and to make sure that the look blends into the rest of the building. So it's never been a possibility that they could build that addition, because they're not a construction company. They're a renovation company. I mean, they don't build stuff out of whole cloth. So the way I see it, you guys have 2 options on the exterior renovation, and you have 2 options on the lighting. The exterior renovation, you can either say, no, we're gonna stick with the $54,800 contract plus the cost of the supplies from Hammond, which makes it, you know, an $86,000 and change project. Or you can say, no, we're gonna do everything, and that's gonna be the $99,000 project that we've been discussing here. So those are your 2 options with the exterior renovation. Your 2 options with the lighting is we're gonna commit the $9,863 to do that project, or we're gonna tell the Maine Efficiency and Nature Conservancy, thank you, but no, we're turning down your $6,000 and we don't do anything as far as the lighting.
Well, essentials lighting.
It's god awful in there.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah, it is.
It's supposed to be motion sensitive, and it just kind of cycles on about a 3-minute cycle, and goes up.
Needs to be updated.
So,
And you can't see where you look, and you have a lot of elderly people, I'm not one of those yet, getting close. They come in this time of year at normal hours, and it's dark, it's just not safe.
and I will say, from a financial standpoint, at least with that project, you're leveraging someone else's money in
Yeah.
order to make it
It's a
happen.
no-brainer, really, as far as I'm concerned. The lighting.
Good, you're
But-
one vote.
But those are the 2 options that you have with each project.
Go ahead, Jack.
The figure was given before, but again, how much is the total reserve that's available?
172,
172 something.
Okay, and when was that?
that was December 31st, but we don't know those numbers until the books have been reconciled at the end
That
of
was
the year.
December 31st, 2018.
Correct.
From 17 to 18, there was $34,000 added.
So I asked Lily, I said, how much do you think that you're going to add to this? She said, a little. So I said, do you think it will be the amount of $12,500 that we're talking about growing the renovation project by? She said, I don't think so,
Why would it be the same as last year?
because it's a different year. Expenses are different, revenues are different.
And I didn't explain the
No, I agree, but I feel it.
So we had fewer kids involved, for instance, in the summer camp program than we did, and in the after-school program than we
The
did.
172 sounds like a minimum.
Yes. So as Lily said, we anticipate that's gonna grow some, but not a lot.
If I may say something, because I'm fond of saying things. So like when we looked at this, you know, yes, Chris's bid on this was $50-some thousand. That didn't include materials. We didn't get a materials cost until just now, you know, this is
Correct.
what this is. So the idea that we can just kind of, you know, sort of have this, you know, pie in the sky attitude that, you know, $50,000 is the price and we want all the work done for that $50,000, well, that doesn't include the materials. So now we got the materials and that's $30-some thousand here. You know, we didn't know what that was yet. And so that, you know, has to be added on to it. And then in the process of figuring out the materials needed and looking at all the total issue, I mean, I'm not a building engineer. I have a background in building maintenance, and that's why I jumped in the interim between, maintenance management in this town to help with this. But, you know, I didn't have time to keep on top of it. And so, you know, luckily Chris did with you, and we've come up with this additional $12,000 to do the job right. I just, yeah, we could vote to just do the $50,000 thing and the materials, but then, you know, we're gonna leave some things rotted. We're gonna leave some things, some Ts uncrossed and some Is not dotted, and then, you know, we're gonna kick ourselves in the ass for that, because that's what we've been doing with this building for years.
Okay.
And so that's, you know, my attitude on
I'd
it.
like to add just, because this has a big impact on.
Sure.
One minute.
Let me mention one thing. One of the options I did not mention was doing nothing with the exterior renovation, because we have a signed contract with these guys. So we're either going to just do what we had initially planned with Chris and his crew with the $31,000 in material cost, or we're going to do that plus the $12,500 that he's recommending that we do. Those are really your two options.
Yeah, I have a question. The material costs that we have here, you're familiar with,
Yeah.
does that include the work scope of the 12,500? So that material is figured into this material list
Correct.
with that work?
Correct.
All right, so, I mean, so if we don't do the $12,500 aspect of this with your original bid, then the material list potentially goes down a little bit.
It would go down some.
Some, yeah. But we, in effect, that this amount that we have here includes the materials for that $12,500 additional work, which we should take into account if we're gonna do that. I mean,
Well,
Okay.
and Ernie, I just have to say, I don't understand why this walkthrough was just on November 7th. if that's
things
the case.
take time, you know, that's the thing. I mean, I wish I could snap my fingers and have
That's
the
not what
the
I'm
north
saying,
end of the
Ernie.
building
I'm
completely
not expecting for you to get angry
engineered.
about it. What I'm asking
Yeah.
about is, there've been walkthroughs done.
Yeah.
And
I can answer that question. We were booked up until then.
Sure,
We just hadn't worked till then, so that was part of the original plan to start
yeah,
late fall.
yeah.
And then it, you know.
And part of that was
Well-
put off because it's
and
taken
it
so
got
long to
put
get to
off
this
a little
point.
bit more, and, yeah. And the other thing is, you know, when we spent a lot of time there, we did the best we could with the information we had at the time. But Chris, he's done work on the building, so he's been like underneath the porches. So there's no way that we could have known, for example, that there was rock, because you can't see it. But Chris has done repairs
Mhm.
to that porch, so he knows, because he's been under there, these stairs need to be replaced.
Mhm.
There's no way we could have known that.
Sure.
All right, my turn now.
Okay.
Regardless of whether this should have been done a long time ago, regardless of whether mistakes were made, regardless of all of that, it's a valuable facility down there. It's an important facility for the town, and I think by voting this down at this point, we're really punishing the town more than anything, rather than looking out, being responsible for expenditures of funds. I think we're making a mistake, and for that reason, I propose that we revote. And I would move that we approve the money that's requested and get the project done.
And are we separating them, or? approving the lighting on one.
Well, we can do that if you want, but I mean, we both need to be done.
They do both need to be done, but they really should be done separately. It's not
Right.
one project.
All right, let's vote on the lighting first. I move that we approve the lighting bill.
I second that.
Can I ask a question on the lighting?
Go ahead.
Where it says replace 2 bulbs with LED at gym entrance. Is that just at the, because when we had voting up there, you cannot see those stairs coming out of that building. So is that addressed?
So it'll be lit up at night.
So outside the building?
Oh, those outside, yes.
It'll be lit up. Yeah, but that's
Those are gonna
absolutely
be
right.
lit up.
It's-
Everything,
It's-
everything, no bulb that's will be in there out of the night.
But I don't know that there's sufficient bulbs at that entrance, that's the issue. It was rainy and kind of drizzly that night, and coming out of that building, people could not see coming down those stairs.
Right. For those downstairs on the gym.
Yeah,
Like from
coming,
the
coming
hallway.
out of, no,
Going out.
coming out of the building towards the parking lot,
Oh, okay, yeah, no,
on that end of the
You're going
building.
down the mezzanine and out that way.
all of those, like,
Yeah, it was horrible. I said to people, no, there's 3 stairs, because you can't see when it's like that.
Okay, Lily, if I go out there and I fall, I know what I'm looking for.
So is
All
that
right.
part of this that's being addressed, or are we just gonna put an LED bulb in there and hope it lights up the area?
like, the fixtures and all that? Is that what you're talking about?
It's
Like-
not just it is not just a matter of replacing bulbs. It's also replacing, repositioning, fixtures, and so this is the project that's before you right now. If we need to add additional lighting, then we'll have to do that at some other time.
We can address that.
At
Let's-
another- at-
well, we get these-
I was asking,
at
had it
greater
been
expense.
addressed? Was this part of it, or is it just changing the fixtures that are there now, upgrading them to LEDs and hoping this corrects the problem?
We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, we did not talk about adding fixtures.
So,
I wasn't asking if we talked about adding, I was asking if that particular dark area was being addressed by this. Does
Yes,
it need to be added?
every fixture, every light in the building will not be as it is today,
This is outside.
inside and outside.
so I propose that we, if we green light this, so to speak, that we'll see how the LEDs perhaps work better to light up certain areas. If there's areas after this is done that are still left deficient, then, we look into, having an additional light put in or spotted differently so that, it's safer for all involved.
All right, there's a
All right,
motion,
so
motion on
make
the
a
floor.
motion that we approve, what is it, $9,583 from the Recreation Capital Reserve to fund the balance of the LED project? Is that what the motion is?
We'll work on the lights.
That is
Okay.
the lights for now.
We want to hear about what you said. All right, the motion's on the floor, and it's been seconded to raise or to approve the,
Approve the acceptance of the grants and authorize spending $9,583 from the Recreation Capital Reserve to fund the balance of the LED lighting project.
did I second that? Does that cover it?
Yes, sir.
All right, all in favor? 4, 1 absent, thank you. Okay, now, on the construction. You want to make a motion, or shall I?
I make a motion that we, let me see the tail end of this. What's our total? Well, we already approved the other contract, so this is an additional, correct?
Yeah, we're only talking about the 12,500, is that right, Anthony?
Correct.
Yep.
But it shouldn't just be 12,500 if Hammond's additionally sent an estimated cost of 31,542. So there's gotta be a cost for materials that we also need to approve.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay.
All right, make a motion covering both.
So you want me to I'll make a motion that we approve the $12,500 additional construction cost and to include the $31,542 for materials for this project.
I'll second it.
Second.
Well, hold on a moment. I just want to be sure that we're talking about the right amount of money here. Because we're increasing the project cost by $12,500, but is this an additional product list from Hammond's that is $31,542 that has not
No,
already
that
been accounted
covers,
for?
that covers the original contract plus the additional 12,500.
So what did we approve previously for the materials list?
We had not approved
You
anything
didn't
as
have
far
a
as I'm aware.
materials list.
Correct.
We have not voted on material at all.
Okay, that's what I want to be sure,
So
is
that's
that we're
what we're
not
doing
somehow.
there.
Yeah,
no,
in this
I appreciate it.
project, in the bidding of this project, it was just the work to take the old material off, put the new material on. The town was going to work with Hammond's, you know, potentially at some, perhaps some, I don't know if this happened, but some discount for the town to get the materials from Hammond because they're a Belgrade business and this is a Belgrade town building. And perhaps we did receive something from Hammond's on that, I'm not sure, but this is the amount that we were given. Perhaps we received it at wholesale, I don't know, but I'd like to think so. But anyway, this is the amount, $31,542, amount of materials for the whole project, and including the $12,500 aspect of it.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
That's enough.
5, 1 absent. Good.
Okay,
Quit while we're ahead.
thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Do a good job, Chris. Please.
Yes,
We'll all have to leave it now.
no doubt.
All right, last item, proposed, no, excuse me.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Chris. Discussion, possible action on paving project update for Pike Industries.
Thank you, Linda.
Town manager?
So I kept you guys apprised of all of our discussions with Pike, and they asked if they could come here and address the board tonight.
I'm gonna address the board.
Thanks for staying late with us.
No, the biggest thing I get the letter from you guys, and it was,
Who are you, sir?
I'm sorry, Jason Griffiths, Pike Industries.
Thank you.
Get the letter, it was disappointed, so I just wanted to meet the board, answer the questions, and just kind of talk through how we got to where we are, and then our intentions going forward. To point right now, the 3 roads have been based, 1 has been surfaced, there's all been shoulder gravel, and then also butt joints were ground ahead of time, and those can winterize, essentially for people to, travel safely throughout the winter months here. Our goal was to hopefully get it all done this season. We ran out of time at the end of it. Ultimately, we were pretty good paving tips. We had it all done in surface. And ultimately, we just kind of ran out of time. So, I think there's some pros and some cons. I think the pros for the town by waiting the season and having base down is that it allows the road to go through a freeze-thaw cycle and then evaluate in the spring if there's any troubled areas. They could be shimmed up and then no final surface goes on. Because a lot of times, after you reclaim a roadway, frost could move to a different spot than it ever had been before. So by giving it that freeze-thaw cycle, you've allowed the earth to settle a little bit better. Some pipes were replaced as well, and sometimes they do settle. And this just gives you a chance, a second shot at it, instead of already having the surface completed in one season. The other thing is, from the letter, there was a letter provided back, basically that locks AC in at a bid time, so there will be no increase to the town. But if it goes the other way, you still receive a credit. And to this point, you've received a credit for about $3,000, because liquid has gone down since the bid. And then I think the other thing too is ultimately reading through the contract is a 1-year warranty. Ultimately, you're gonna end up with a 2-year warranty because obviously it wasn't completed in this fiscal season, it will be completed in the spring. So you actually get another year's warranty on the road itself. We have paved all the driveways, but I'm aware that we actually missed one, so on Thursday we'll come back up and grab that last driveway that we missed. So I guess that's kind of where I stand, and just kind of want to open it up to you guys to get questions, regarding us.
honestly, I think what the board was feeling like was that, and, you know, and the town as a whole, that Belgrade wasn't a priority in your schedule this year. And so I think that, you know, we don't particularly love that. You know, we put it out there, we request the taxpayers' money, we tell them this is what's going to get done. And then it felt like we were maybe like at the tail end of things, like, oh, we could get out there for a day or two, get a little bit more done. So it felt a little more piecemeal than it has in the past.
It's been a number of years, I think, since Pike has paid for you guys. I know that Nan's have paid for quite a few numbers of years.
Mhm.
I did take a look at, you know, our schedule of every day that we've been here, and essentially we were here, you know, multiple days every month from June to the month of November. I don't think everything was left just for the back burner, and, you know, at the end of the year, we tried to get in and get it all done. You know, we worked, you know, road by road to open it up in time, so that you guys have your work done, and come back in behind and pay that.
Good.
Are you going to, before the job is done, are you going to bring the shoulders up to the grade and are they finished? Paved?
Yes.
So right now it's inch and a half forward.
Yeah, no, we have, I think, one more shift to, for the job.
Okay, good, you're done with it?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Morris, are you satisfied?
Yes, the reason we were going to the television.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
So Jason, if I may, I have two questions. One, can you give us a time frame about when you think you'll be back in the spring and finishing up those roads?
I'll leave that to you. We could be here the first of May. Typically, we'd like to wait till frost comes out of the roadway, and I don't know what that answer is right now. And typically, posters don't come down until May 1, May 15, somewhere in there. So I'll leave that open to you.
I'd leave that to Morris.
August, around August first.
Middle of May,
Yeah,
And we're kind of tied to some of the other towns where the asphalt plants are on posted roads for other municipalities, so.
Correct, okay.
I'd like to wait.
Okay, and then we received a letter last week that I'm sure all Pike customers did, announcing a 4% increase in the aggregate effective January 2nd. I'm assuming that we're not subject to that?
No, I think that's more towards purchase of aggregates in the facilities.
Okay.
Yeah. But,
Okay.
no, our prices stand as is.
Okay.
And as indicated, the.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
double check.
No, it's a very good question.
Anything else? Anybody? Good. I don't think there's anything to vote on, but thank you for the update.
Better luck next year.
Well, we appreciate you guys being willing to come in and talk to the board, and I apologize that you had to wait hours and hours. You're probably starving, but, sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care, Jen. Be careful going home.
Was it AC? Was that one signed?
Is it AC?
No, that's raining.
We did have one thing, the last invoice was.
Yeah.
was
this is
still-
good. Yeah.
That's a new
We
invoice.
haven't had a chance to pass it.
There's the man. Thank you, thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
was mailed next Sunday,
Okay.
Monday. That one considered the adjustments.
Okay,
Okay, so now we're up to the warrant.
okay. I'll let our treasurer know. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
All right, the warrant. Who's got the warrant?
Warrant number 125, and the total amount of $586,799.45.
I'll move the
So
warrant.
that's motion by saying it. Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Oh, did you move it?
When you read it somewhere.
Yeah, okay, I'll second. Okay. Any questions on the warrant?
I'm not loving that. We seem to have an awful lot of lost paychecks.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yes, that's some reconciliations from some people, and it's true. And it's not that we lost them, It's that they lost them, and so now we're trying just to reconcile
I'm
them.
like, maybe we need to be thinking about direct deposit then.
Yeah.
Because this is an awful lot of these, and I honestly, knowing this teenager, I don't know any teenager who does not somehow account for $400 and something. I didn't say you can force them into doing it, but you can certainly offer it, which would
We do.
eliminate this.
We do. My son has it.
So, yeah.
Jack.
Take
Good
care,
night, Jack, thank you very
Jack.
much.
Yes,
We've warned them
And
all.
Just
Tom,
seems like
all
an
right, I'm
awful
sorry,
lot
I
of
called you
money that
Paul
they're
again.
like,
I
"Ah."
can't get that out of my head.
Tom, you're gonna miss the town manager report.
We've
We
we've
might-
warned them out.
We may all miss the town manager report. All right. Anything else? I got one or two. Anybody else have any questions?
I didn't.
Go ahead, Manny.
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I did not. Did not.
okay. Just wanted to point out we're paying my wife for what she worked on the election, so just so it's there, just what I should point it out.
Paying my wife.
We knew that, we're also paying, you know, this guy's wife.
Yeah, you talk about your wife, I'll talk about mine. Okay, the other one, the
You're
next,
also paying Alex's wife.
on page 2, number 19382, Bromar Inc., building permit applicant, what is that?
Bromar Printing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So
they're
we
pretty-
have new forms that are streamlined for building permit applicants, and so that's the printing of those new forms.
Oh. Wonderful. Thank you. I see where it said permit, so I didn't read far enough, as usual. Page 5, number 19403, Jason Hodgson Masonry on the fire station.
Yep.
It only cost $600? I thought it was gonna cost more than that.
No, that's what we said, 600.
You did say 600.
It
Okay,
says-
good. I was gonna say, God, you saved some money. I think that's all I've got.
I had one.
What is it?
Is that we're paying another over $5,000 for the right side appeal. I'm just,
Yeah.
where does that leave us now?
So, it is in the hands of the state Supreme Court. Our council expects a ruling sometime around the first of the year. And assuming that that continues to go our way, then we will start pursuing enforcement action and reimbursement of cost at that point.
I guess I was kind of aware of that financially in terms of how much
Oh,
money we
golly, I
spent
don't,
on this.
I mean, I don't know.
One of these days, if you could get a total on that, we were up somewhere over $20,000 already,
Oh, easily.
and now we're over that.
I'll find out. That's a good,
Because, I mean,
now I'm kind of curious myself.
Well, yeah, Dennis looked into it once upon a time, and then, you know, when we were talking about, you know, what potential fines, if need be, if we, you know, ultimately win this whole thing, you know, that's gotta be figured into it, somewhere down the line.
I'll also say, just on a completely unrelated matter, that our title search for the Old Town office came in $400 less than what we were, than what we anticipated. So that was
Amen.
You're gonna address that in your report?
no.
All right, well, I will ask you a question about it when we get to your report.
We ready to vote on the warrant?
Yep. All in favor? 5-4. Got it, 1 absent. Thank you very much. All right, town manager, it's all yours.
You have my written report, and I don't want to go over it with the exception of the first item, because I need some direction from the board. So as you guys are all know, we have in the past looked at converting our street lights to LEDs. And in fact, on election day, I met Howard Hollinger, and we chatted about this. And he told me that his group that had studied this had come down and just thought Affinity was the outfit that we should be going with, and that was the outfit that Mike and I chatted with at the MMA convention, and I talked with some of my peers there, and they sang Affinity's praises. So they have calculated that the cost for our purchasing the lights from CMP would be $55.87. They're installing the new LED heads in that would be $16,825. which yields a total project cost of $22,412. However, we would realize first-year energy savings cost of $84.61, which produces a total first-year cost of less than $14,000. So, when you take that into consideration, along with the fact that the Hollinger Group, as I'll call them, decided that Affinity was the best outfit for us to go with, and the fact that Affinity has been awarded contracts by other municipalities that underwent a competitive bidding process, including Augusta and Waterville, and some of the others that I listed here, let's see, Fairfield, Farmingdale, Gardner, Hollowell, so forth. They all went through a competitive bidding process that awarded contracts to Affinity. We would, with the board's approval, like to negotiate a contract with Affinity for the conversion of the streetlights, since it falls under the $15,000 threshold for an RFP, and so that we can also budget that cost in the 2020 budget.
I'd be in favor of that.
So the only hesitation that I have is that at last town meeting, what we asked the taxpayers for was not money to do the conversion, but we asked them to study the conversion and bring it back to them. So my suggestion would be that we put together a warrant article that addresses the fact that that these are the cost savings and that we're requesting their permission to do the conversion.
I may very well be wrong about that, but I seem to recall that warrant article just, I don't know that it said about bringing something back to the voters. I think it just said about a raise and appropriate money for a study.
For a study.
Yeah.
So that means they approve step one.
Okay.
So then, in order for us to do it, we have to go, because the money's gotta be raised and appropriated.
The study is basically what Hollinger's group did.
Okay.
And we kind of are, right after town meeting, had moved fairly quickly where we had, some pretty good cost savings that we thought we could realize relatively soon. But that was the dilemma that we had, is that we had not.
Yeah, the cost savings are gonna be about 90% on our electric bill. We spend about $10,000 a year, so we're.
Do we have, we
Then
usually
we
have
have
a
the right
copy
to-
of the town thing there, but
The annual report?
Yeah.
I'll grab one real quick.
because it depends on if
Oh,
it says
sure,
raise and
sure.
appropriate, or if it says study.
I think we raised the money.
I don't remember. I don't
See
remember
if the town
exactly.
will raise and appropriate $3,000 to evaluate converting existing streetlights leased from Central Maine Power to municipality-owned LED streetlights for a potential cost savings estimated at up to $6,000 per year after the conversion is complete.
So I would suggest that we draft a warrant article that says that we're requesting this money to do the conversion. And it's hard because you can't always put an explanation in there, but somewhere have an explanation, maybe in the town manager's report or something that says the actual cost savings on this is, we estimated at $6,000, but could potentially be as much as blah, blah, blah.
Oh, it's gonna, I mean, Affinity has calculated it at a cost savings of $8,500 per year.
Well, nobody's disputing it's a good idea, and I think we ought to do it, but we need to do it the right way.
Yeah,
The
we're gonna ask
process.
for the money to do it.
Okay, so would the process then be warrant article, then negotiate contract with Affinity? Or negotiate
I
contract with
think you can
Affinity?
negotiate, you can't sign it.
Right.
Okay.
Go
So,
ahead and
and
negotiate.
we've done that in the past, where we've said, we need a price from you, and then, we
That's good.
can't ask the
And that's good
taxpayers till
information for
March,
the
yeah.
town meeting, so
Okay,
Yep.
just don't sign anything.
got it.
What
Unless
is
you
the,
got-
what is the dollar figure that we have to go to a warrant article for? Is it just any dollar figure, or is
Any
this
dollar
under that figure?
If it's a whole new project, it needs to go to the taxpayers.
Anything they haven't approved previously
Yeah.
has to go to them.
No, all right. I'm fine with it, I just,
At least unless it's some of the things that are exempt from town meeting, like we voted on something today, what was it?
I mean, I guess if we went to a warrant article to get $3,000 to study it, then I guess we might as well go to a warrant article to get the rest of the money to do it, so, it's fine, I guess.
So the rest of my report stands as written. If you read it, it's smashed.
What about tell us about the Humane Society.
The Humane Society, so, the water bill, Humane Society is going up on their cost 7% this year. So that caused me to say, well, I wonder what Augusta charges.
We used to have Augusta historically, and then Augusta went up exponentially, and Waterville had stayed under.
Well, now Augusta is cheaper than Waterville. And interestingly, because I don't know that we are getting our money's worth right now from our contract, from our ACO contract.
I was wondering that.
And so I have been searching for potential new ACO. And so just today, I was on the website, on the state listing of ACOs. And interestingly, it has which cities use which shelters. And we are one of only 3 communities that use the Waterville shelter, whereas there's, a dozen or more that use the Augusta shelter. And I went and I toured the Augusta shelter on Friday, and I was very impressed by the comprehensiveness of their services there, far more than what I was accustomed to. And so they have sent me a contract, and I've asked them a couple of questions about the contract. And so I intend at the next meeting to bring a proposed contract to you guys for your consideration.
Because that used to be the ACO who would contact both Waterville and Augusta, and then the ACO used to come and meet with the board quarterly and let us know what they've been up to.
So we have, I checked in through, I think, October, and our ACO had delivered 2 dogs to the animal shelter, both at the same time, and 7 cats over the course of this year.
Anyway, yeah, I think it's time to look around for them.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, is there,
What,
do we just have a?
Does he work for other municipalities?
5
as well?
others.
5 others.
So perhaps this time is stretched a little too thin.
Maybe.
for
but he's
Belgrade.
living up in Farmington now, too.
Yeah, I don't know that he's terribly interested either. Cheryl does a fantastic job of checking with dog owners and saying, hey, we notice you haven't paid your permit, or your license fee this year. And that yields a lot of results, but the folks who don't respond to that, she provides a list of those folks to the ACO, and that's where it ends.
Honestly, it used to end there too, and then all the ACO started.
Well,
Yep, all or
she
nothing.
makes it easy.
Right.
She does it geographically, so if you wanted to go knock on doors, you could do that. And I've said, will you at least call them?
One thing, and then not a criticism, I did notice in the newsletter, it was great that you put the thing out about needing dog licenses. I actually opened it on the counter because I was like, the puppy is now 6 months, I gotta wait till she's spayed and blah, blah, blah. Put a cost in there yearly when we put the notification out, because I think some people think it's bigger than it is. So just as a FYI, moving forward, like, oh, it's only $6, dude. Get in there and register your dog. So,
One final question. When are we gonna close on that building down there?
As soon as possible.
No.
It's not in our hands, Mike, it's in the hands of the bank. And so we can't do anything until the bank says, and today they wanted another form for us to fill out. And so Liz and I filled it out and sent it to them. So,
They look like they're open for business.
They are,
up there.
they are, and that's what has me concerned.
Yeah.
they did provide us proof of insurance.
Well, I think we ought to put a time limit on it, and just, we want to close.
They're not holding up the process either. It's the bank.
It's the bank. Yeah, it'll all come together. Just-
And having